Chapter 322, The Guidance of the Tao. These are Tao patterns, the initial manifestation of the Tao. Some people are born with the Tao, some cultivate it later in life, like the sudden gain you've experienced is not unheard of. Regardless, possessing Tao patterns means that sooner or later, you will transcend the mortal plane and become an immortal. Let me offer you my early congratulations. Zhang Xianwang spoke with a chuckle, appreciation gleaming in his eyes. Guwen immediately clasped his fists in response. This one's name is Guwen, may I inquire about my Taoist friend's illustrious name? He could feel that Zhang Xianwang was deducing his karma, but he didn't mind. His own karmic manifestations had long been altered by him. Unless one's realm was higher than his, looking at his true self would reveal only the life of an ordinary disciple tending the fields, unremarkable and plain. I am Zhang Xianwang from a very distant place. To meet is to be fated, why don't you show me around? I'd also like to learn about the heavenly ranking tournament and the supreme sect. Faced with Zhang Xianwang's suggestion, Guwen naturally wouldn't refuse. After all, he was here for Zhang Xianwang. The two walked out of the treasure pavilion, and upon seeing Guwen's mount, Zhang Xianwang didn't think much of it as he couldn't see through the path of returning primordial spirit. On the way, Guwen introduced the supreme sect, and when he mentioned the sword Venerable Fudao, Zhang Xianwang immediately inquired about the specific details. As they discussed the sword Venerable Fudao, Guwen's face lit up with fanaticism, praising him to the skies. The blood prison great saint remained expressionless, yet inwardly he was impressed. Such magnanimity from his master was worth learning. If he were Zhang Xianwang, he would never associate Guwen with the sword Venerable Fudao. Not only did Zhang Xianwang find the blood prison great saint ordinary, but the blood prison great saint also didn't think highly of Zhang Xianwang. Both were great cultivators hiding their true cultivation levels, with inevitable pride within them. Inadvertently, the two arrived near the heavenly repair platform. Guwen asked with a smile, "There's a heaven-cutting axe on the platform, would you like to give it a try?" Zhang Xianwang gazed off into the distance, shook his head slightly, "I'm certain I cannot pull it out, no need." He turned back towards Guwen, "He'll be staying at the Supreme Sect for quite some time. Next time we meet, he'll treat you to a drink. If someone tries to tempt you to leave the Supreme Sect, you'd better refuse. Possessing Tao patterns is an innate blessing, but they can also attract calamities. At least within the Supreme Sect, the sword Venerable Fudao protects you, so others won't dare to mess around." After speaking, he turned and left. Guwen looked at his retreating figure, thinking to himself that this person was quite agreeable. He had assumed that the people from the Immortal Spirit dynasty were all haughty as they seldom interacted with the outside world. Yet today's encounter had given Guwen a different perspective on the Immortal Spirit dynasty. Guwen looked distantly towards the heaven-cutting axe, where Zuijin stood by the axe side, guarding it day in and day out for 10 years. Now, when one mentioned the heaven-cutting axe, it was hard to bypass Zuijin. Guwen's thoughts stirred, his divine thought mixed with powerful sword intent boldly invading Zuijin's eyes, causing him to become dazed. Immediately after, Guwen rode the blood prison great saint in another direction, without approaching the platform. Zhang Xianwang, not yet far off, stopped in his tracks and turned around, his eyes widening in astonishment. At the same time, a sky-reaching sword intent erupted from Zuijin, causing cultivators nearby to swiftly retreat, figures materializing out of nowhere around the heaven-cutting axe, isolating Zuijin. Zuijin's eyes lost their luster, and he stood there dazed, sword intent rising from below, billowing his robes and hair. Feeling the sword intent belonging to sword Venerable Fudao, the great cultivators of the Supreme Sect all breathed a sigh of relief. What's happened to him? It's the sword intent of sword Venerable Fudao. Feel it carefully, Zuijin's sword chi is growing stronger. Is sword Venerable Fudao giving him guidance? If it's him, I can understand. After all, he has stood guard here for so many years. So he wasn't lying, did sword Venerable Fudao really pat his shoulder back then? The cultivators murmured among themselves as Zuijin was immersed in the sword intent, unable to extricate himself. Far beneath the heavenly repair platform, Zhang Xianwang felt the sword intent emanating from Zuijin's body, and his mind was profoundly shaken. He was, after all, a carefree primordial immortal, yet he could not detect sword Venerable Fudao making his move. He even failed to comprehend how sword Venerable Fudao's sword intent could lead Zuijin into a state of path enlightenment. At this moment he realized his own insignificance. The carefree primordial immortal was merely at ease. He had not yet reached the stage of pondering the great Tao. In his peripheral vision was the retreating figure of Guwen, who nonetheless had not caught his attention. He couldn't imagine that Guan, who had chosen a different path from his own, was the very sword venerable Fu Dao who had brought him such astonishment. Guan did not look back, keeping his achievements and fame concealed. Hearing the distant clamor, the blood prison great saint also did not turn his head, knowing that the legendary sword venerable Fu Dao was right behind him. When immortals intervene, mortals tend to fuss over nothing. How tedious. After seeing Zhang Xianwang, Guan continued roaming around the city, purchased many items and then returned to the valley. Back in the third medicine valley, Guan found an XN and handed over the things he had purchased. The third medicine valley also stored many medicinal herbs, elixirs, secret books and magic artifacts, allowing servant disciples to purchase them directly at lower prices than in the city. This was a benefit Guan bestowed upon his disciples. Comparing the prices, they grew even more grateful to him. Such deeds meant that even after servant disciples completed their foundation establishment and later saw Guan, they would still address him respectfully as master. After arranging all of this, Guan prepared to go upstairs and read. Coincidentally, Xinjin arrived at that moment. Guan had no choice but to stop and wait for her. Over these years, Xinjin had not neglected her proper affairs and had even passed on her insights to the Supreme Sect, helping to create many transmission jade slips. These allowed disciples to cultivate not just by understanding the text, but by visualizing the cultivation scenes, a merit that garnered her true respect within the Supreme Sect. "Come upstairs quick, there's something great," Xinjin said in a rush and then hurried upstairs with Guan following behind. Inside the room, once the door was closed, Guan felt the aura below grow faint. It was obvious that Ji Xiaoyu was attempting to eavesdrop again. Reaching the table, Xinjin pulled out a painting and quickly spread it open. Guan walked over to look and saw an ancient painting, depicting many naked people kneeling on the ground, waving towards the sky, where a group of people robed in splendor floated amidst the clouds as if they were immortal beings. I previously came across an incomplete ancient scroll and have been analyzing it daily, imagining its complete scene. Perhaps there is a hidden guidance within the Tao leading me, said Xinjin, brimming with pride. It was imagined? Upon closer inspection, Guan noticed that the contours of the environment captured in the painting contained the mysteries of heaven and earth rules. Could it be that there was indeed a Tao guiding Xinjin? Something wasn't right. Why would it be Xinjin? Guan began to doubt whether Xinjin truly could reach enlightenment through music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. He had earlier made a move that had shocked Zhang Xianwang, and now it was Xinjin's turn to shock him. To grasp the heaven and earth rules without stepping into the immortal path realm? That was preposterous. Could she be the reincarnation of an immortal? But that shouldn't be the case. If she were the reincarnation of a great power, Guan would likely have perceived some hints, just like with Ji Xiaoyu and Yang Jian. No matter how he looked at her, Xinjin did not appear to have a significant background. Chapter 323 The Path of Destiny. Guan couldn't help but use lifespan detection on Xinjin. Xinjin, Divinity Transformation Realm, second layer 329/1200/5800. Her maximum lifespan had increased by more than 1,000 years. Could it be that she also possessed an innate enlightenment saint body? Filled with curiosity, Guan decided to observe Xinjin more in the future. As Xinjin began to narrate the process of her painting, Guan carefully looked at the scroll before him. It seemed to depict a mortal pleading for the compassion of an immortal, but the execution was quite strange. The person kneeling on the ground was smiling, while the high and mighty immortal had a frown. The outline of the clouds, the lines of the mountains, the currents in the rivers, etc., all were manifestations of the rules of heaven and earth. Once the scroll was unfurled, the actual rules of heaven and earth subtly drew closer to it. In the eyes of a divine thought true immortal, the world became both bizarre and splendid. Xinjin, immersed in it, couldn't feel the changes in the rules of heaven and earth and continued to excitedly share her creative process. Guan began to probe into the causality surrounding Xinjin and saw all of the experiences of her life. He suddenly realized that, without being aware of it, he had become the person most closely tied to the causality of Xinjin's life. The relationship between Xinjin and the Daotian sect grew increasingly distant. Although she was the daughter of the sect hierarch, her father had many children. Without regular contact, the bond between father and daughter became ever more distant, with her mother having passed away long ago. Guan suddenly had a bold thought. Could it be that Xinjin was influenced by him? After all, he was a divine thought true immortal. Even though he concealed his cultivation level, his essence of life was still different from the surrounding disciples. Over the years, the time it took for disciples to enter Medicine Valley and complete their apprenticeship had become increasingly short, which could also be due to his influence. The degree to which Shenzhen had reached was not to be underestimated. Her innate comprehension was remarkable. But without Guan, it might have been very difficult for her to achieve this step. Gradually, Guan's understanding of the way of cause and effect deepened. On reflection, Guan had influenced the entire Supreme Sect. Regardless of the reason, the Supreme Sect indeed had entered an unprecedented phase of rapid development. After a while, Shenzhen's voice brought Guan's thoughts back to the present. "Hey, are you listening?" Guan turned to look at Shenzhen, who had a gritted teeth expression that didn't look fierce, but rather made Guan want to reach out and pinch her. "I'm listening. You are really incredible. I can't understand how you did it. If what you say is true, you might really have the talent for enlightenment," Guan praised. Upon hearing this, a broad smile broke across Shenzhen's face. She chuckled proudly and said, "This painting is for you then. You'll continue to meditate." With that she turned and left. Guan didn't see her off, but instead turned his gaze back to the scroll on the table. He felt the energy from below returning to normal. Ji Xiaoyu was once again immersed in her cultivation, but he didn't care. He sat on the chair looking at the scroll, lost in thought. The influence he had on his surroundings wasn't just active from his side but also aided by the momentum of heaven and earth, which gave him a deeper understanding of the ways of heaven and earth. He had this inexplicable feeling that he wanted to hide, but the way of heaven and earth did not want him to hide, hence it influenced the environment around him. The great momentum of heaven and earth was like a surging tide. The nets of cause and effect were like heaven-trapping webs. All beings could neither resist them nor escape. Everything has its advantages and disadvantages. While helping the environment around him, he would also be drawn into more webs of causality. In that moment, Guan suddenly understood why many great powers retreated into seclusion indefinitely. It might not be merely because enlightenment took so much time. Just like the great cold demon sect, there must be many great cultivators hidden away in seclusion, who had evaded disaster precisely because they withdrew from the world. Is this not a way of surviving? Guan was not fearful because of this revelation. Rather, he was contemplating how heaven and earth operated the laws of causality and destiny, creating a set of rules that most beings fear. Destiny. Guan never believed in an irresistible destiny. That which is irresistible is only so because it still lies within the rules. If one's strength surpasses the rules, how can one be manipulated? As for how to transcend destiny and surpass the ways of heaven and earth, that was the real direction Guan needed to think about. He sat in his room without moving all night, and early the next day he rode the blood prison great saint to the outer gate city to watch the excitement. A night had passed, and Zuijian was still in deep enlightenment, with over 100 great cultivators from the Supreme Sect protecting him and temporarily suspending the inheritance assessment of the heaven-cutting axe, not allowing anyone to approach Zuijian. Zuijian's cultivation level was not worth mentioning in the current Supreme Sect, but as he received the sword intent inheritance of the sword Venerable Fudao, it had a completely different significance. The Supreme Sect placed great importance on it as a way to show respect to the sword Venerable Fudao. As Guan arrived at the outer gate city not long after, he encountered a middle-aged man accompanied by several young men and women. They were walking among the crowd, looking around curiously, finding everything new and amazing. "Chuanyue, long time no see." A voice reached Chuanyu's ears, prompting him to turn his head instinctively, only to see the blood prison great saint standing next to Guan. The blood prison great saint was as tall as an adult and had a domineering presence, but Chuanyue had seen larger demon pets and mounts, so he was not flustered. Chuanyue looked at Guan with doubt and asked, "You are?" The fact that the other person was riding a mount meant he must be a cultivator, and Chuanyue had to approach him cautiously. The descendants of the Chuanyue family following behind were just as curious, sizing up Guan, surprised to find that someone in the Supreme Sect knew their grandfather. Guan smiled and said, "Have you forgotten? I met you in your home when you were only 15 years old. You kept nagging your grandfather to take you on the path of immortal cultivation." Chuanyue was stunned, then his eyes widened in astonishment and he asked, "You're the person who visited my grandfather back then? How come you, so young?" Guan asked, "How is your grandfather?" Chuanyue hurriedly replied, "He's quite well, spends his days cultivating and drinking tea with no need to worry about anything." The descendants of the Chuanyue family looked at one another in confusion. Their grandfather's grandfather was the primordial ancestor of their family, wasn't he? They had only seen Xiaochuan once or twice and in their minds Xiaochuan was amiable, but with a status far beyond theirs, they could only feel reverence. After a conversation, Guan learned that Chuanyue had come to bring his descendants to broaden their horizons, while also seeking opportunities. Guan took out a token from his sleeve and tossed it to Chuanyue. If their aptitude is not exceptionally outstanding and there are no other connections, they can seek to become servant disciples at the Chores Hall. With this token of mine, you can enter the Third Medicine Valley. Chuanyue instinctively caught the token and was about to inquire further when the Blood Prison Great Saint took a step forward and brushed past him. Chuanyue turned to look at Guan's retreating figure and asked, "Senior, how should I address you?" Guan simply raised his hand and made no sound. Chuanyue couldn't help but stare at the token in his hand, deeply puzzled. At that moment, another male cultivator came over and laughed. "Brother, you're in luck to be connected to the Third Medicine Valley. With such good fortune, foundation establishment is as good as certain, making a solid foundation for your path of immortal cultivation." Foundation establishment. The descendants of the Chuanyue family immediately brightened up, their breathing quickening. Chuanyue quickly saluted the male cultivator and inquired about the situation in the Third Medicine Valley. The male cultivator gave a rough introduction, mentioning thousands of servant disciples, countless medicinal herbs, and the high-ranking members of the supreme sect that could be seen in the valley every day, among others. The information left Chuanyue dumbstruck. Just who was the person they had just met to have such influence? Unable to contain himself, Chuanyue asked, "Do you know the person we just met?" The male cultivator shook his head with a smile, clapped Chuanyue on the shoulder, and walked away, leaving Chuanyue even more curious and in awe of Guan. The now distant Guan couldn't help but smile wryly to himself. That kid has always loved playing these little tricks back in Medicine Valley. The cultivator who had introduced Chuanyue to the Third Medicine Valley was precisely a disciple who had graduated from there. By now, the number of disciples who had graduated from the Third Medicine Valley and Mystic Valley had reached tens of thousands, which is why Guan often encountered familiar faces. Guan's reputation had also spread far and wide, and considering the number of foundation establishment pills needed by these disciples, who else within the inner and outer sects could supply them? Moreover, over the years, Guan had indeed made no additional demands of the servant disciples, which is what made him admirable. Guan soon arrived at the book collection hall, ready to chat with the book enthusiast there for a while. 7 days later, the Golden List Grand Tournament officially commenced. The Nine-Fingered Divine Lord also represented the Supreme Sect in the battle. With Liya unable to return, the Supreme Sect needed the combat strength of a wandering immortal. How the Supreme Sect persuaded the Nine-Fingered Divine Lord, Guan did not know. He had not watched at that time and wasn't interested in finding out now. That day, LV Badian came to find Guan, pulling him who was watching the Golden List combat into the attic. Aside from the new disciples who were curious, many people ignored it as commonplace. Once seated inside the house, LV Badian, unusually, did not discuss official matters but instead talked about his son, LV Xian. That kid really is blindly loyal to Li Xiandao. I have no idea what he's thinking. No matter how the Taizong dynasty develops, it remains the world of the Li family. What could he possibly gain? LV Badian complained indignantly. Guan was reluctant to comment on their father-son matters. It must be said that LV Badian and Li Xiandao were similar, both in their actions and their relationships with their sons. Originally, Liya also despised Li Xiandao, while LV Xian still seeks the life of LV Badian to this day. Guan had no interest in untangling their causality, an outsider's clarity was useless on family matters. Recently, Li Xiandao arranged for him to go to the Domain Master City of Broken Sea Domain. I'm not sure if it's a blessing or a curse. The establishment of the Broken Sea Domain Master City makes me feel like it's targeted against the sword Venerable Fu Dao, LV Badian said with concern. Guan inquired, "Why do you think so?" The Great Cold Demon sect appeared long before this domain was established, which means that even though the Holy Court sets the order, it does not manage specific locales. When I put myself in the place of the Holy Court, no matter how I speculate, establishing the Broken Sea Domain seems to be a means of defense, while also investigating the sword Venerable Fu Dao. In that case, why don't you go to the Heaven-Cutting Axe and ask the sword Venerable Fu Dao to leave? Nonsense. Don't spout such things in the future. LV Badian glared and spoke sternly. Guan smiled helplessly. This man was prone to irritation. LV Badian, following that, brought up Li Lingtian. Over the years, Li Lingtian had gained a great reputation, having previously participated in and topped the Golden List Grand Tournament and the 100 Clans Grand Meeting, creating a bigger sensation than in Hao and LV of years past. To this, Guan had no particular stance. With Li Lingxin's return to the Taizong continent, it was obvious he was targeting Yang Jian. Guan found it hard to take an interest in the squabbles of the younger generations. What he cared more about was the identity of the mysterious great cultivator who had arrived at the supreme sect that day. Chapter 324 Heaven Sect, Immortal King Legend. After LV Badian left, Guan followed down the staircase, continuing to watch the excitement. Now, the Mystic Heart Realm combat was underway, its spectacle reflected upon the sky, inciting copious discussions among the disciples in the valley. How formidable! Is this what the Mystic Heart Realm is like? What's this? Just wait until you see the Mahayana Realm combat. That is truly thrilling, not to mention the immortal combat. Even here within the valley you can feel a sense of oppression. It's an eye-opener. I wonder if we'll ever reach this stage? How could we not? Cultivate diligently, enter the third Medicine Valley, and your starting point will already be higher than 90% of the disciples. That's right. Even if one is a scion of a noble family without sufficient aptitude, they start as servant disciples too. Do you know about Li Ye from Divine Exotic City? He's my master's junior brother, and they entered the Medicine Valley on the same day. I know. My master once said that Li Ye often used to cry, feeling hopeless about his future. It was my master who inspired him. As the disciples conversed, their topics began to digress. The third Medicine Valley's replacement of old and new was rapid, with many new disciples joining each year. The number of disciples registered in the valley had already surpassed 1,800. Guan naturally mingled among the groups of disciples without causing a disturbance. They didn't need to stand to greet each other or harbor suspicions, a mood that arose from Guan's amiable manner, which also shaped the disciples' approach to interaction and life. Guan sat beside an Xan and inquired about the previous battles. Before an Xan could reply, Yuanying came and sat down on Guan's other side, eagerly jumping into the conversation and briefing him on the situation. Her excitement stemmed from the great cultivators of the Star Sea congregations who also came to participate, including a senior she admired. She believed that this senior could capture first place on the immortal list. To this, Guan merely smiled. This immortal list tournament was a gathering of sleeping dragons and crouching tigers, with many who concealed their true cultivation level and identities. Aspiring to the first place was very difficult. The arrival of a divine immortal of wondrous Dharma to participate baffled Guan. What was their reasoning? No matter how you looked at it, the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma's participation in the immortal list tournament seemed to devalue their status, and they might even provoke the sword venerable Fudao, leading to a deadly disaster. Guan couldn't understand. The immortal spirit dynasty sent people, the holy court also sent delegates, and now the mysterious divine immortal of wondrous Dharma appeared as well. But what comes is to be accepted. Currently, the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma still remained a mysterious presence, seen but never met. The carefree primordial immortal stood as the highest entity the immortal cultivation sects could reach. As for the Tao void mysterious immortal, who existed one realm higher, Guan had not yet encountered any. An Xan thought that the nine-fingered divine lord could win first place, sparking a debate with Yuanying. Given Nzin's temperament, she naturally could not out-argue Yuanying. Guan couldn't just watch his precious disciple get pushed around, so he joined the debate, quickly causing Yuanying's face to flush red. 2 days swiftly passed by. On this day in the early morning hours, although dawn had just broken, many figures were already bustling about in the city. Within a narrow alley, Zhang Xianwang from the immortal spirit dynasty stopped in his tracks. Tilting his head slightly, he glanced askew at the person behind him. "Why do you follow me?" Zhang Xianwang asked calmly. Standing behind him was a white-haired old man, exuding an air of immortality. His mere presence compelled the passing cultivators at the alleyway entrance to take another look. The white-haired elder stared at Zhang Xianwang and inquired, "Why has one from the immortal dynasty come to this place?" Zhang Xianwang turned to face the elder, his expression indifferent as he countered, "If you do not answer, how shall I?" The elder replied, "You may call me Heaven Sect." Heaven Sect. Zhang Xianwang's face paled, a look of incredulity spreading across it as he exclaimed, "Heaven Sect? How is that possible? 50,000 years ago, had you not already?" Heaven Sect interrupted, "It's your turn to answer now." Zhang Xianwang's gaze flickered. He remained silent for a moment. "You probably don't want to cause a conflict here," surely there are holy court cultivators within the supreme sect. The emotionless tone of Heaven Sect sent chills down one's spine. Taking a deep breath, Zhang Xianwang said, I'm here to recruit Sword Venerable Fudao. And you? Heaven Sect replied, I come for an old acquaintance. An old acquaintance? Oh. Since our purposes do not conflict, let's not disturb each other any further. Having said that, Heaven Sect turned to leave. Just then a voice called out, Taoist friend Zhang, what brings you here? The speaker was none other than Guan, approaching Heaven Sect head-on, the two passing each other. Heaven Sect, Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma Realm 7th Layer 789023/1700000/1750000. A formidable old monster who has lived for 788,000 years. On the 7th layer of the Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma Realm? That's frightening, almost catching up to me. Guan thought to himself as he looked at Zhang Xianwang, his face breaking into a surprised smile. Seeing Guan, Zhang Xianwang couldn't help but smile. After Heaven Sect left the alley, Guan then asked, who was that person just now? Were they troubling you? Do you need me to contact the Deacon Hall? Hearing this made Zhang Xianwang smile even more. He laughingly said, no trouble at all. But do you know what his cultivation level is? What cultivation level? Divinity Transformation Realm? Void Crossing Realm? Or Unification? As he continued, Guan's voice rose several notches in apprehension. Zhang Xianwang, bemused, changed the subject. What brings you here? Guan responded, I came to purchase seeds for medicinal herbs. And you? The two began to chat, and Zhang Xianwang, favorably impressed by Guan, did not fuss about their disparity in cultivation level and conversed as equals. After a while, Guan asked, you seem quite impressive. Did you sign up for the Immortal List tournament? No, I'm here for a different matter. May I help you with it? There's no need for that. Alright then, I won't disturb you any further. Guan bowed in farewell, then departed. Zhang Xianwang watched him go, a hint of hesitation in his heart. Guan pondered why Zhang Xianwang sought to recruit him. He had previously thought the Immortal Spirit Dynasty was rather xenophobic and unlikely to be recruiting him into their ranks, meaning it must be some other scheming. After leaving the alley, Guan continued wandering about the city, planning to buy some interesting trinkets for Tian Yaoer to lift her spirits. Managing the Outer World cave was quite taxing. Guan had to show favor to keep her from feeling disheartened. Just after passing two streets, Guan spotted Heaven Sect. As they were about to pass by each other, Heaven Sect suddenly raised a hand and held onto Guan's shoulder. Guan quirked an eyebrow, feeling uneasy about being touched on the shoulder. He turned his head toward Heaven Sect, asking in surprise, You, huh? Are you the same person from before? Heaven Sect's eyes were fixed on the Immortal King crown on Guan's forehead, his gaze piercing. Guan felt his heart drop. Could it be that this person saw through the disguise of the Immortal King crown? Leave the Supreme Sect tonight and I will find you, offering you a chance for rebirth anew. With these words, Heaven Sect turned and walked away. Guan was confused. From Heaven Sect's statement, it seemed that he hadn't guessed that Guan was Sword Venerable Fudao. But what was the reason then? As Guan watched him leave, continuing on his way, he pondered the matter. Not far away within the crowd, Zhang Xianwang frowned and ultimately sighed, heading in the opposite direction from Heaven Sect. The afternoon's combat had reached its pinnacle with two Nirvana Realm great cultivators clashing, one of whom was from the Supreme Sect. Naturally, both hailed from the Ocean Cultivators. The two Nirvana Realm great cultivators employed spells, divine skills, demon pets, formations and various other arts, comprehensively displaying to the spectators what it meant to be an immortal cultivator. Within the same realm, the higher one's level, the harder it was to slay the opponent, easily leading to a prolonged fierce battle. Guan found it highly entertaining. These individuals' cultivation levels were average, but their variety in battle was impressive. Guan, who could only defeat enemies instantly, couldn't experience this kind of thrill and could only feel envious. Until the night descended. Guan left Mystic Valley alone, flying towards the distance. His furrowed brow and tense demeanor were acted out deliberately. To demonstrate resolve, he sped up his flight. An hour later, Guan felt a surge of mana approaching and immediately prepared himself, yielding to the other's intention. At first glance, he seemed to plummet suddenly, landing in a forest. Once on the ground, he quickly stood up, pretending to be panicked. When he saw Heaven Sect's figure, he finally calmed down. Heaven Sect emerged from the darkness, speaking admiringly, You are courageous indeed. It's no wonder you dared to accept the immortal king crown. Though I do not know why it has not devoured you, regardless, you have received the recognition of an immortal path's supreme treasure. Do you have a master? Guwen shook his head. I don't. Is the immortal king crown the diadem on my head? I just stumbled upon it somewhere. He had already altered his own causality, so even Heaven's sect would be misled. Certainly, Heaven's sect had deduced through causality that Guwen bought the immortal king crown at a bargain price from a treasure pavilion. At that time the crown seemed freshly unearthed and antiquated. How could a divine immortal of wondrous dharma see through the trickeries of a Tao void mysterious immortal? Do you wish to learn about the origins of the immortal king crown? Once you know, you will not be able to maintain a life of tranquility, Heaven's sect said to Guwen, his voice soft. Guwen replied with a wry smile, Can I go back now? No, once you have come, there is no turning back. Then why do you ask? The way of Heaven's sect is the heavenly Tao, and the heavenly Tao must comply with the will of the people. Does this count? You came, so it counts. Guwen felt that this person was being unreasonable, but since he sensed no hostility from Heaven's sect, he decided to listen to what was to be said. Tending to plants and occasionally craving some excitement wasn't too bad. He dared to face thrills also because Heaven's sect posed no threat to him. The immortal king crown was forged by the first immortal king of the great heavenly spirit land, who existed during the distant primordial times, when the heavens and earth first parted. Back then there was no holy court, no heavenly Tao rules in the outer heaven. Heaven's sect's voice filled with a mysterious aura, causing Guwen to glimpse ancient scenes. The vast earth stretched out and colossal beasts roamed freely. There were no systems, no sects, no dynasties. He saw the silhouette of the immortal king, blurred yet emanating a terrifying presence that reminded him of Long Zhan. This indicated that the immortal king stood on the same level as Long Zhan, the 9th level of immortal path. When the immortal king declared, I am the immortal king, thunder roared and the land was stricken by various natural disasters. Thinking too highly of himself, the immortal king sought to challenge the heavenly Tao, striving to unify all creation, to venture into the outer heaven, and in doing so, offended the will of the heavens. He was ultimately afflicted by the curse of the heavenly Tao and, upon his impending death, sealed his own Tao within the immortal king crown. The immortal king crown is also the first ever immortal path's supreme treasure in recorded history. At the very least, it is the first within the great heavenly spirit land. Heaven's sect's tone remained emotionless. Chapter 325 Heavenly Tao Inheritance The first immortal king, the first immortal path's supreme treasure. Guwen had felt a power from the immortal king that transcended the epochs, a mighty will that challenged the heavenly Tao. Heaven's sect continued to watch over Guwen and spoke further. Ever since the fall of the immortal king, the world was submerged by the oceans, ushering in an era of decline, but from destruction comes creation, and even in the most perilous environments, new beings are nurtured. Over the long epochs, many have emulated the immortal king. The title he bestowed upon himself also became a glory pursued by later generations of cultivators, continually producing new immortal kings who challenged the authority of heavens and gradually increased the heavenly restraints imposed on this world. Epochs change and seas turn into mulberry fields. It wasn't until the birth of the Holy Court that beings finally had the chance to set foot in outer heaven. I inherited the legacy of Heaven's sect and took on its name. Heaven's sect can only be transmitted singularly, and I want to take you as my disciple, to make you the next Heaven's sect. By the end of this statement, the sound of the wind in the forest abruptly stopped, and the flora ceased their swaying. Guwen widened his eyes and asked incredulously, Me? Can I really do it? I'm just a mediocre talent. What does talent matter? Heaven's sect has its own legacy that can help you break free from your shackles. You have been recognized by the immortal king crown. There must be something extraordinary about you, either an ancient treasure body or your soul harboring greater power. The Tao patterns on your forehead are the best proof, Heaven's sect stated, his eyes blazing as he gazed at Guwen. Guwen hesitated, but I don't understand what being Heaven's sect entails. What are your ideals? Heaven's sect is about complying with the heavenly Tao. What you need to do is to follow the heavenly Tao. As long as you adhere to this, you will constantly surpass your limits and might even achieve immortality. If immortality is attainable, why do you want to pass it on to me? Because I have regrets and no longer wish to comply with the heavenly Tao. These words from Heaven's sect only added to Guwen's confusion. Are you trying to trap me or just deceive me? Seeing through Guwen's doubts, Heaven's sect looked up at the bright moon and explained, I have lived for 780,000 years. In my life, every choice made was in compliance with the heavenly Tao. For the heavenly Tao, I have forsaken my family and dear friends. I have attained immortality and earned a revered holy name, but over time, I also grew regretful. I no longer yearn for immortality, but you probably still desire it. After hearing this, Guan's first thought was to pass on the legacy to those close to him. Heaven Sect continued, my time is limited. After this Heavenly List conference concludes, I will relinquish the position of Heaven Sect. You have no choice, but you need to spend the remaining time adjusting your Taoist heart. With that, he vanished into the forest. Guan frowned, staying in his spot. Don't tell anyone else, lest you reveal the fate and bring misfortune upon them. Muttering to himself. Guan scoffed internally, but he indeed felt a mysterious and familiar aura from Heaven Sect, similar to the light layer enveloping the great heavenly spirit land. Could the heavenly Tao really exist? Guan pondered a while in his place before finally leaving. In the following days, several great cultivators made their names known at the Heavenly List conference, with the most dominant being Heaven Sect, who self-proclaimed the title. Besides that, nobody knew much about his origins. The Nine-Finger Divine Lord also performed strongly, but he lacked the aura of being the foremost. Time flew swiftly. 2 months passed rapidly, and the Heavenly List conference continued. During this time, Supreme Sect was as lively as a festival every day. On this day, sensing something while reading under a tree, Shinshinzi looked up and saw an old man with white hair approaching from the valley entrance. It's him? That presence? Shinshinzi frowned thoughtfully. Heaven Sect felt his gaze and glanced at him. Their eyes met, and in an instant, Shinshinzi felt an immense terror, instinctively bowing his head. Heaven Sect withdrew his gaze and proceeded forward. His eyes swept Medicine Valley and soon locked onto Yang Jian, who was interacting with a disciple. Yang Jian, sensing something, turned his head and instinctively frowned when he saw Heaven Sect. This newcomer was no ordinary figure. Yang Jian, already at the void-crossing realm, had sharper senses than others at his level. From the first glance at Heaven Sect, he knew he was no match for the other. He wasn't panicked, for his master was still within Medicine Valley. Heaven Sect approached Yang Jian, with Shinshinzi watching him closely, debating whether to intervene. Mystic Gang Dominator Body, have you felt the thickness of your soul? Heaven Sect's first question startled Yang Jian. Yang Jian instinctively looked around. The others can't hear our conversation, nor can they see me, except for that heavenly demon from Bitter Sea Buddha Sect, whom I intentionally allowed to see, Heaven Sect stated emotionlessly. The term heavenly demon alarmed Shinshinzi, who immediately bowed his head. Yang Jian, however, was not distracted by the mention of the heavenly demon. Suppressing his nervousness, he asked, "What exactly do you want?" Heaven Sect raised his right hand, revealing a golden jade stone in his palm, and said, "This object is for you. Just crush it and you will recall past life memories, regaining your true identity. You have reincarnated 100 times? It's rare for someone to help you awaken the Mystic Gang Dominator Body. You might not get such a chance in future reincarnations." Yang Jian instinctively caught the golden jade stone, pressing further. "Who are you really? What do you want? We fought side by side before, I was severely injured and you perished along with your path. I would never harm you. Once you awaken your past memories I will appear," said Heaven Sect before turning to leave. Yang Jian looked at the golden jade stone in his hand, his mind in turmoil. Past life? Having read Investiture of the Gods and Journey to the West, he naturally believed in reincarnation, but now that it directly affected him, he couldn't help but feel unsettled. He took a deep breath, looked up, and saw Heaven Sect heading towards his master's attic. He wondered if his master had noticed this person's approach. Previously, he believed his master was invincible, but Heaven Sect's methods were beyond his comprehension. Except for him and Shinshinzi, no one in the valley could see his movements. What kind of divine skill was this? Yang Jian couldn't understand, and his wariness of Heaven Sect piqued. He hesitated whether to warn his master, fearing he might ruin his master's plans if he had already noticed. After considering, he used his divine sense to follow. When his divine sense reached the attic, Guan showed no reaction, which reassured him, and he withdrew his divine sense. Heaven Sect reached the attic. Stepping into the first-floor room, he muttered to himself, "Reincarnation Path Emperor? Great karmic bonds, untouchable. I didn't expect this place to have so many significant karmic bonds. Could Sword Venerable Fudao be nearby?" He then ascended the stairs. Walking through the door, Heaven Sect appeared before Guan, who was at his desk, and then revealed his true form. His gaze fell on the supreme secret records in Guan's hand. A flicker of surprise crossed his eyes. He suddenly regretted choosing Guan. But by now he had no other options. Ahem, Heaven Sect feigned a cough, causing Guan to instinctively look up, and then he stood up abruptly as though he had seen a ghost. How did you appear? Guan asked fearfully. Heaven Sect replied irritably, you are soon to be the next Heaven Sect, destined to wield the heavenly will. Stop reading books that corrupt the mind. Guan closed the supreme secret records explaining, this book is different. Enough. Heaven Sect cut him off, his gaze returning to the immortal king crown. You roam around wearing the immortal king crown all day, aren't you afraid of trouble? Not everyone is like me, without greed for immortal path supreme treasures, especially since the immortal king crown is special, being one of the rare treasures not bound by the chief fortune of the Holy Court. The Holy Court manipulates? What do you mean? Guan asked, puzzled. Considering that nearly all immortal path supreme treasures were presented by the Holy Court to help various congregations better manage the populace, Guan had obtained the 7 Stars Mirror from the 7 Stars Spirit Realm, and the Star Sea congregations also had their own supreme treasure. Yet almost no one attempted to steal their supreme treasures, indicating that some powerful force was balancing the greed of the great powers. Heaven Sect explained, the vast majority of supreme treasures in the world are dispatched by the Holy Court, aiding the various sects in governing the populace. Of course, some treasures aren't under their control, and your immortal king crown is one such example. The Holy Court can trace all supreme treasures linked to Chi fortune, which is why they are more wary of those they can't control. If someone discovers your immortal king crown, you're in major trouble, and even the Chi fortune of Heaven Sect can't protect you. Guan thought, I have another supreme treasure in my possession, and you haven't recognized it either. Chapter 326. Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court. Heaven Sect lectured Guan at length, telling him how to act in the future and what pitfalls to avoid, as if imparting his last words. Despite thinking to himself, I, a divine thought true immortal, will not acknowledge you as my master, Guan considered retaining Heaven Sect's legacy since Heaven Sect was determined to abdicate his position and had decided to search for a successor on his behalf. Before leaving, Heaven Sect said, though there are many secrets about you that puzzle me, I have no desire to understand them anymore. Your disciple named Yang Jian, let him leave when he wishes to, do not stop him for he will bring you great trouble. Guan nodded, planning to dismiss him first. Heaven Sect raised his right hand, a chi sphere formed in his palm and he threw it at Guan. With no time to dodge, Guan could only watch as the chi sphere entered his body, causing him to stiffen. Heaven Sect looked at Guan, a smile appearing as he said, it's a pity I didn't formally accept you as my disciple. It's better this way to avoid my karma affecting you. With that, he turned and left, his figure passing directly through the door. Feeling his presence disappear, the color of panic finally vanished from Guan's face. Accept me as a disciple? Sorry, I am more afraid of getting involved in your karma. Guan touched his chest, extracting the chi sphere. He could feel the powerful force inside, no weaker than Heaven Sect's, and its chi fortune was something he currently couldn't fathom. Precisely because of this, he couldn't merge with the chi sphere. Let's call it Heaven Sect's chi fortune. Guan took out the 7 Stars Mirror and channeled the Heaven Sect's chi fortune into it. When he first obtained the 7 Stars Mirror, Guan had erased all the chi fortune, karma, and related restriction inside it. He treated not only Immortal Path supreme treasures with such thoroughness but also any magic artifact. To avoid any accidents, he checked it again. Once sure there were no issues, he tucked the 7 Stars Mirror into his pocket and then sat down to continue reading. The grand ranking competition was still ongoing. As of today, the combatants were all immortal beings, unlike Liya who relied on Immortal Path supreme treasures from lower realms, thus each combat was a testament to cultivation levels. When Heaven Sect broke into the top 10, he announced his withdrawal from the competition and then left. His departure destined to leave a lingering question in the grand ranking competition. No matter who won first place, they could not be considered the true victor of the competition in the minds of the people below. Heaven Sect was the most dominant presence in this grand ranking competition. Unequivocally, Guan and Yang Jian tacitly did not mention Heaven Sect and continued their cultivation as usual. Guan trained Yang Jian, not hoping he would serve him for life. When he saw through the karma of Yang Jian's past life, he was already prepared to let Yang Jian go. He even looked forward to seeing what impact Yang Jian would make on the world after he emerged magnificently. By the end of summer, the grand ranking competition concluded, and Nine-Fingered Divine Lord representing the Supreme Sect won the first-place seat. Carefree Primordial Immortal Zhang Xianwang from the Immortal Spirit Dynasty did not participate. He lingered in the Supreme Sect, searching for Sword Venerable Fudao. Clearly wary of Holy Court, he acted very cautiously and dared not reveal his identity. After the grand ranking competition ended, Zhang Xianwang still did not leave. Until one night in early autumn. Zhang Xianwang was reading in his room, with more than a dozen books about Sword Venerable Fudao spread out on the table. A cold breeze stirred the oil lamp on the table. Zhang Xianwang's eyes flickered, instinctively looking to the side. Immediately after, his pupils contracted sharply as he abruptly stood up. He saw a figure shrouded in purple demonic qi, his face's shock quickly turning to joy. The newcomer was Guan. His 9 extremes yin-yang body had advanced to the extreme path transforming form, allowing him to change into various forms, and even without transformation he could avoid karma calculation by using the extreme path transforming form. However, the image of Sword Venerable Fudao was too deeply ingrained, and he had to meet people in this guise. "Why are you looking for me?" Guan spoke, his voice hoarse, prompting Zhang Xianwang to imagine a face weathered by the vicissitudes of life. Zhang Xianwang promptly bowed, then introduced himself. He came from the Immortal Dynasty, sent by the Master of the Immortal Dynasty, Yang Xian Emperor, to request Sword Venerable Fudao to take action on a matter. He did not immediately mention what it was but instead asked Guan's impression of the Holy Court. It upholds the great righteousness of protecting the mortals, yet shows disdain for mortal spirits with its pride. It has its good and bad sides. Are the Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court at odds? Guan asked nonchalantly. Zhang Xianwang took a deep breath and said, "It's not that we are at odds with the Holy Court, but rather that the Holy Court has always wanted to eliminate us, to make the great heavenly spirit land entirely theirs. The Master of Holy Court, Xingtian, comes from outer heaven and established the Holy Court in this land. The top hierarchy of the Holy Court mostly shares a similar origin with him, while the Immortal Dynasty is a gathering of native immortal beings from the great heavenly spirit land, evolving over generations to form the Immortal Dynasty." This was the first Guan had heard of such matters. If that's the case, wouldn't I who don't belong to the Immortal Dynasty be deemed an enemy? Guan asked. It was important to consider right and wrong based on one's stance. If the stances were different, he didn't understand why the Immortal Dynasty would still seek him out. Zhang Xianwang hurriedly explained, "It's not just the Immortal Dynasty that belongs to native beings of the great heavenly spirit land, all beings below heaven are so, it's just that the current beings only recognize the Holy Court." "So what then? You guys wouldn't want me to go against Holy Court, right?" Guan countered. "Senior, you refuse to accept Qi fortune and status, and you conceal your real identity. The only thing you could fear is the Holy Court. If you cooperate with the Immortal Dynasty, we will fulfill any needs you have. However, before that, we hope you can infiltrate Holy Court to rescue someone for us. Someone who is not from the Immortal Dynasty but has been beneficial to us," Zhang Xianwang earnestly said. He was about to introduce this person when Guan suddenly interrupted, "No need to continue, I refuse. It does not matter who rules the world, nor do I wish to get involved in your grievances. If that's the matter then please leave. Head have to be full to do the Immortal Dynasty's bidding." Not to mention whether Zhang Xianwang's words were true, even if they were, he wouldn't agree. Currently, only the great Nether Saint King from Holy Court bore a grudge against him. He had no reason to position himself against Holy Court. Moreover, the Immortal Dynasty clearly felt inferior and thought they couldn't overcome Holy Court. He had no desire to be their pawn. "Senior." Zhang Xianwang still wanted to persuade, but a terrifying force enveloped him, making him fall silent and tremble. This carefree primordial immortal appeared quite embarrassed now. "Leave the Supreme Sect, do not disturb my secluded cultivation. I do not wish to be an enemy of any force, but if someone forces me, I won't hesitate to visit their Taoist tradition." Before his words fully faded, Guan disappeared from the spot, leaving Zhang Xianwang in the room, his face changing expressions. He originally thought Sword Venerable Fudao was concealing his name because he feared Holy Court. He didn't expect that what Sword Venerable Fudao feared was the entire world. Are there really such ascetic cultivators in the world with such a temperament? Meanwhile, Guan returned to the 8 scenic caves. Had he not been favorably impressed by Zhang Xianwang, Guan wouldn't have met him at all. Had Zhang persisted unreasoningly and kept pushing, Guan wouldn't hesitate to annihilate him. He continued his artifact refining, which had been delayed for several months due to the grand ranking competition. Now he needed to pick it back up. His goal was to create his own Immortal Path Supreme Treasure when he reached the 9th level of Immortal. What kind of Immortal Path Supreme Treasure would be worthy of him? He constantly pondered this question. As dawn broke, Guan felt Zhang Xianwang's presence departing, bringing a smile to his face. He hoped Zhang Xianwang could convey the signal that Guan had released to the Immortal Dynasty. He didn't want further conflicts with the Immortal Dynasty. Standing up, he tidied up before leaving the 8 scenic caves. After the grand ranking competition ended, new disciple numbers in the Supreme Sect surged, even attracting high cultivation level cultivators to join. The Supreme Sect once again began expanding the sect. It recruited many servant disciples to labor, offering generous compensation. Guan's Third Medicine Valley remained unaffected because he offered even higher treatment to the servant disciples. 10 years passed, and the number of disciples in Third Medicine Valley broke 2,000. This year the Supreme Sect agreed to expand Third Medicine Valley. Guan stood on a mountaintop watching his busy disciples, his face filled with a smile. The expansion of Medicine Valley helped increase his lifespan income. Naturally, his mood was excellent. A figure approached from behind him. It was Yang Jian. Yang Jian had grown more composed and his brow bore a vigorous look. Master, Yang Jian approached Guan and respectfully bowed. Guan did not turn around but gazed into the distance, asking, "Have you decided?" Taking a deep breath, Yang Jian replied, "I have decided. I carry too much karma. First it was Impermanence Tian and now Heaven Sect. As my cultivation level continues to rise, the problems will only increase in the future. I don't want to cause trouble for you in Medicine Valley. Also, I wish to venture out alone to cultivate my heart and seek Tao." Guan turned around, looked at him and softly laughed. "You truly have grown up. Go then, it's time for you to be on your own." Hearing Guan consenting, Yang Jian sighed with relief, his face showing happiness as he solemnly nodded. "Leave today and don't say goodbye to anyone else." Guan waved his hand. Stunned, Yang Jian could only nod. As he turned to leave, he couldn't help but ask, "Master, who exactly is my senior brother?" "You've already chosen another path, don't ask further. After leaving Third Medicine Valley, do not mention my name or reveal my existence or else." Guan's back faced Yang Jian as he spoke in a calm tone. He didn't complete his sentence but he believed Yang Jian understood. Yang Jian took a deep breath, knelt again and bowed deeply to Guan. Then Yang Jian left. Guan watched the sky, his gaze profound. He was not afraid of Yang Jian exposing him. Currently, as Sword Venerable, he displayed the cultivation level of Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma. Who could guess his cultivation had reached Divine Thought True Immortal? Moreover, Yang Jian himself had a significant background. It was better that he left to follow his own path. The child has grown up and ultimately wants to soar high. Guan sighed, then shook his head with a wry smile, turning to walk down the mountain. When he reached the base, he saw an XN chasing the white spirit rat. The corners of his mouth curved upwards. At least this disciple was still here. Now that Yang Jian had left, it was time to focus on training in XN. Although Nzin's talents were ordinary, if he diligently cultivated, he might surpass Hao and Yang Jian, for Guan himself was growing at a much faster rate. Chapter 327. Nzin's surprise. Late at night, an XN knocked on Guan's room door, and with a wave of his sleeve the door opened directly. An XN stepped inside and closed the door behind her. She approached Guan's desk, curiously looking at her master. Guan seldom called for her at this time alone, and she couldn't help but be curious. Guan caught the disrupted cultivation aura from downstairs and spoke. "Yang Jian has left to gain experience. How about I teach you cultivation techniques myself from now on?" An XN was taken aback and asked, "Haven't you always been teaching me?" Guan chuckled. "Previously I only assisted you in energy absorption, but now I will truly help you become stronger." After hearing this, an XN smiled brightly. "If Master is willing to teach, naturally I have no objections as long as you don't despise me for my lack of insight." "Don't worry." Guan offered reassurance, then began to talk about affairs within Medicine Valley. The cultivation aura downstairs returned to normal and remained undisturbed throughout. After chit-chatting for a while, Guan let an XN leave. Then he left the Third Medicine Valley heading towards Mystic Valley. Arriving in Mystic Valley, he stepped into the Nianshu cave, preparing to spend the night with Tian Yaoer and her 3 demons. In a bright and magnificent hall, rows of figures stood, forming 4 long lines, neat and orderly, with the two middle rows spaced wide apart to create a broad aisle. A rainbow light flew into the hall, swiftly condensing into the form of Zhang Xianwang. Zhang Xianwang quickly strode forward, reaching the steps, where he bowed in greeting and looked up to see a towering figure seated on a golden throne, the back of which was made of overlapping golden weapons, like an unfurled fan. The towering figure donned a red dragon robe and a dragon crown with hanging beads, surrounded by whirling blood-colored dragon chi, as if encircled by dragons. His visage was majestic, eyes seemingly containing a sea of stars, piercing and profound. This person was none other than the ruler of the immortal dynasty, the Yangxian Emperor. After Zhang Xianwang recounted his mission's details, the hall erupted with discussion among the immortal spirits. This sword Venerable Fudao dares to show no respect to us, arrogant. He indeed has that right. After all, he dared to refuse the divine position offered by the holy court. It seems he is one of those ascetics who wishes to stay away from conflicts. The world is complex and one can't simply hide whenever they wish. The holy court will certainly be suspicious of him. Now that the holy minister dominates the court, we need not lift a finger. He alone can provoke Sword Venerable Fudao into action, considering that the great Nether Saint King is his lackey. Once Zhang Xianwang concluded his report, the discussions in the hall turned raucous. Ignoring the surrounding noise, Zhang Xianwang's gaze was fixed on the Yangxian Emperor, awaiting his judgment. The Yangxian Emperor slowly asked, "From what you've seen, is what he spoke the truth?" Silence fell over the hall upon his words. Hesitating for a moment, Zhang Xianwang replied, "Based on what I know of the Supreme Sect, his actions are indeed consistent with his character. He only strikes to defend against external threats to the Supreme Sect, never due to personal vendettas. At least no one knows of any, and even the Hall of Elders seems unaware of Sword Venerable Fudao's true identity." The Yangxian Emperor listened and narrowed his eyes. No one dared interrupt his contemplation. After a while, the Yangxian Emperor spoke, "In that case, let's not disturb him any further." "Yes," Zhang Xianwang replied, relieved. Although the actual realm of Sword Venerable Fudao was unclear, the mere fact that he could effortlessly crush the great cold demon sect meant he was at least at the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma realm. If his realm exceeded that, he would be even more dangerous to provoke. Unable to ally, it was also needless to make an enemy. Zhang Xianwang then added, "During this mission, I also encountered someone from Heaven Sect, who went to the Supreme Sect looking for someone. It's likely that the reincarnation of the great Nether Saint King is hidden within the Supreme Sect." "Heaven Sect? Seems like the Holy Court is in for more trouble," commented the Yangxian Emperor, his tone playful. Zhang Xianwang shared this sentiment. He asked, "If trouble does break out, do we need to intervene?" The Yangxian Emperor snorted, "Intervene in what? With the arrogant nature of Heaven Sect and the great Nether Saint King, they didn't need our help in the past. Naturally, we should not offer it now. They underestimated Shengxian's benevolence. Without Xingtian, the Holy Court would only become the greatest terror in the world." Zhang Xianwang fell silent, reflecting on the majesty of Heaven's Sect inside. The other immortal spirits in the hall began reminiscing about the past, and regarding the fortunes of Heaven's Sect and the great Nether Saint King, they were mostly schadenfreude. The autumn wind blew through the woods as the blood prison great saint lay on the ground, pondering deeply as he watched an Xan practice. Guan sat nearby reading a book, occasionally shifting his position. The blood prison great saint turned to Guan and asked, "Master, she has been meditating for 5 ancient hours. Does she have a talent that I am unable to see through?" Back then he could not see through Yang Jian, and now, faced with Nzin's transformation, he began to doubt himself. As Guan turned the page, he responded, "There aren't so many extraordinary geniuses in the world. I merely wanted her to achieve path enlightenment." The blood prison great saint's eyes widened, shocked. He had not given it much thought when Guan asked Zuijian to seek path enlightenment, as Zuijian already had remarkable achievement in the sword Dao. But an Xian was different. She was just an inexperienced girl, lacking the demeanor and potential of a powerful being. Could someone so ordinary really be transformed? The blood prison great saint suddenly felt that Yang Jian's current fate was perhaps truly shaped by his master's defiance of the heavens. His heart ignited with excitement. How could one not achieve greatness following such an entity? If Yang Jian comes back and sees an Xan surpassing him, that would be interesting. The blood prison great saint entertained this thought, suddenly feeling that Guan might actually have nurtured an Xan intensively for this very reason. Poor Yang Jian. Nevertheless, It proved that the blood prison great saint's choice was correct, and his mood became even more joyful. Unbeknownst to Guan, the blood prison great saint had conjured up so much in his mind. While he appeared to be reading, he was actually watching over Yang Jian as he ventured to the sea. He saw Heaven Sect tracking Yang Jian, and apart from them, no one else was watching him, which meant that the great Nether Saint King had not yet realized Yang Jian's identity. This indicated that no trouble would come his way for the time being. After a while, Guan's divine sense traveled to outer heaven, where a carefree primordial immortal was engaged in combat, quite a rare sight. The adversaries were clearly mortal enemies, striking fiercely, shaking the void. Guan sensed many great cultivators secretly watching the battle, with various divine senses weaving through each other, making him muse that great heaven and earth was indeed full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. As evening approached, Guan finally withdrew the divine sense that had been focused on Anexin, bringing her back to awareness. Anexin slowly opened her eyes to find two new cultivation techniques in her mind: Heaven and Earth Primordial Skill and All Things Form and Energy Art. Though these techniques were already enhanced by Guan, they were enough for Anexin to ponder for a lifetime. Heaven and Earth Primordial Skill was the foundation of her cultivation, while All Things Form and Energy Art could conceal her cultivation level, both complementing the Primordial Reincarnation skill. Once she regained her composure, a look of shock flashed across her face. So profound. Instinctively, Anexin looked towards Guan, her eyes filled with surprise, confusion, unease and joy. She cautiously asked, "Master, was it because of you last time too?" Guan, with a book in hand, nodded lightly. "How does it feel?" "Good, but..." Anexin stopped mid-sentence, hesitant to ask a lingering question, afraid of offending Guan. How could Master be so powerful? Could Master be an immortal? Guan calmly said, "From now on, I will teach you cultivation in private, and you mustn't tell anyone." For some reason, upon hearing these words, Anxin's heart quivered. Sounded so familiar. A figure from deep within her memory emerged, coincidentally overlapping with Guan at this moment. Could it be? Impossible. Wasn't Master just a little over 300 years old? How could he be so formidable? Guan put away his book, looking at Anexin. "The identity of Supreme Sex Guan is indeed my disguise. You guessed it right, I am him. From the very beginning, you've only had me as your master." With these words, Anexin immediately stood up, her eyes welling up and her body trembling uncontrollably. "Master." Overwhelmed by emotions, Anexin burst into Guan's arms and began to sob uncontrollably. Guan, helpless, said, "Why are you crying? You're making it seem like we haven't seen each other in ages, and I haven't mistreated you these years, have I?" Anexin buried her head in his chest, sobbing, "I haven't been mistreated. Just, I never expected that, after all these years, what I've wanted most is actually happening. I'm so foolish. How could there be two people in this world who are so good to me? Master, I've missed you so much." The blood prison great saint was utterly confused. Weren't these two just master and disciple? Why the emotional reunion? Guan patted Anxin's back. "Let go of your master, you're grown up now. Don't let others see this." Anexin released Guan and then knelt on the ground to wipe her tears, her face radiating with a smile. "So, Master, you tricked us. If my senior brother knew you were our master, he would probably be devastated." "Wait, does that mean you knew him because you were looking out for him back then?" Anexin asked wide-eyed, her shift from formality to familiarity not out of disrespect, but because the master who saved her and led her on the immortal cultivation path was like a father to her. In front of her father, she had no apprehensions. Guan said, "You could say that. However, our relationship should stay as it appears on the surface, and don't tell your senior brother." Anexin immediately nodded, her eyes still red, but now she was excited. Suddenly she glanced at the blood prison great saint, hesitated and said, "Master, but he hurt us." The blood prison great saint bristled. "What do you mean behind my back? I am the master's most trusted mount, even closer than you disciples." Guan smiled. "Don't underestimate him. Bull Demon King, feel free to share your story with her." With that, the blood prison great saint stood tall, filled with pride, and began to reveal his true identity. Ascender. Mahayana realm. Just those two aspects were enough to shock Anexin. Her mouth agape, and as for the long list of titles that followed, she had already tuned out. She turned back to Guan and asked, "Master, does that mean Yang Jian is really my junior brother? What is his cultivation level now?" Chapter 328. Master, what realm are you exactly? He has already reached the void-crossing realm in terms of cultivation level, Guwen replied offhandedly as if he was talking about a trivial matter of no importance. Anexan was shocked once again, her mouth agape and hands involuntarily covering her face, seemingly unable to accept this reality. She and Hao had started cultivating on the same day and knew all too well how extraordinary Hao's pace of cultivation was. Precisely because of this, she was very clear that Yang Jian's progress was no less sensational than Hao's. She had watched Yang Jian enter the valley, watched him grow up. In the beginning, how mediocre Yang Jian had been, yet he had grown so rapidly right under her nose. It was simply outrageous. Suddenly Anexan didn't know what to say. Guwen looked at her and smiled. Keep cultivating well, strive to surpass those who came before you. Anexan hesitated, but my talent. After all, she had trained under Guwen, and seeing the vast gap between her and Hao, her confidence had long since been worn away. What was in the past was in the past. Had I not let you settle in, how could you have today's temperament? Do you think your senior brother could have had it all smooth sailing? I've intervened for him countless times over the years. He always loves to cause me trouble, Guwen huffed. Anexan was astonished. The master had helped the senior brother before? Why hadn't the senior brother mentioned it? Damn it, he actually kept it hidden from me. Anexan gritted her teeth. She looked at Guwen and asked, then, do I have a chance to surpass my senior brother? Guwen spoke earnestly, that depends on how much determination you're willing to put forth. No one is predestined to be stronger than another. These words completely ignited Nzin's aspirations, as if flames were blazing in her eyes. Blood Prison Great Saint was somewhat displeased. I haven't finished bragging yet. After returning to Third Medicine Valley, Anexan was in an exceptionally good mood, wandering around and greeting everyone she saw. For this senior disciple of the Medicine Valley, all the disciples held great respect. Passing by, Chuanyue asked with a cheerful smile, Senior sister, why are you so happy? Anexan replied with a smile, because the moonlight is beautiful tonight. Chuanyue looked puzzled, but Anexan did not explain, instead brushing past him. On the other side in a loft, Guwen picked up Green Hero Travelogue and had only been reading for a short while when Ji Xiaoyu came up the stairs and entered the room. Where did you two go during the day? Ji Xiaoyu stared at Guwen and asked. Guwen answered, we went out for cultivation. Really? What can you teach her? Well, I managed to teach Yang Jian, didn't I? Just wait, maybe he'll make a name for himself and shake the world someday. Ji Xiaoyu raised an eyebrow. After a moment of silence, she asked, you wouldn't happen to know Sword Venerable Fudao, would you? Guwen's face changed dramatically and he exclaimed with shock, how did you know? Really? Truth be told, I am actually a disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao. Heh. What, you don't believe me? Okay then, I am Sword Venerable Fudao. Ji Xiaoyu rolled her eyes at Guwen and said, you're always talking nonsense. Every time I ask about your secrets you always dodge the question, yet I've shared everything with you. At this point, her tone carried a hint of melancholy. Guwen replied helplessly, my dear sister, I do want to know. Every time you just tell me outright, I listen with trepidation, fearing that your enemy from a former life will come knocking at our door. It's not death I fear, but if the enemy tortures me severely, even if I confess, they might not believe me. As he spoke, Guwen rambled on, causing Ji Xiaoyu to show a look of remorse. From Guwen's perspective, it indeed seemed like a lot of pressure. After Guwen finished speaking, Ji Xiaoyu asked, should I stop telling you from now on? Really? False. I'm still going to tell you. You only live once. I speak to you not because I want to talk about these things. Having said that, Ji Xiaoyu turned and left, leaving behind her solitary silhouette. Guwen laughed to himself. This girl's nature was indeed amusing. Then he picked up the Green Hero Travelogue from the table and continued reading. Xian Tianyi hadn't published a new book recently, which had allowed some laziness to set in, causing Guwen some dissatisfaction. Find a moment to tap him on the shoulder? Forget it, that's beneath my dignity. Having Shenzhen come back to the Jianghu wouldn't be bad either. She has the talent to surpass Xian Tianyi. High up under the blue sky, above the white clouds, Guwen rode the Blood Prison Great Saint with an Xan standing beside him. An Xan, dressed all in white and wearing a white jade mask, was at that moment caressing her mask. Master, where are we going? An Xan turned her head and asked, feeling a powerful force whisking her away, immense and vast. To another branch of your master's sect, Guwen replied. Upon hearing this, an Xan immediately became excited and asked, Master, what realm are you really in? Even Senior Nine Fingers and the others can't see through your disguise. I am slightly higher in cultivation level than the nine-fingered divine lord, Wu Xing and Xin Xinzi, Guan answered ambiguously. Seeing that he was unwilling to reveal more, an XN didn't press the matter and started to get curious about their destination. A gust of sea breeze blew from the front, prompting an XN to turn her head. Immediately her complexion changed drastically. One by one towering and majestic peaks entered her vision, shocking her very eyes. Guan glanced at her, feeling a sense of emotion. Since they had recognized each other, an XN seemed to have become a different person, lively as if returning to her youthful days. This indicated that she truly saw Guan as family. With parents present, a child can afford to be willful. Without parents to accompany, one must learn to behave properly. An XN was like this, which made Guan quite happy. After all, he had watched an XN grow up, and she had been with him for so many years. In his heart, wasn't an XN like a daughter? Look at you, acting like you've never seen anything. This is Mortal World Peak, and the master here is the Peak Master of Dingtian Peak. Blood Prison Great Saint said proudly, as if he himself were the Peak Master of Dingtian Peak. An XN exclaimed in astonishment, Dingtian Peak? I've heard of it. Senior Lu came to attend the Millennial Peak Conference before. So that's how it is, no wonder. Master, if Senior Lu knew it was you taking care of her in secret, with her affection for you, she would probably wish to pledge herself to you right there and then. Guan's handsome face turned red and he fake coughed, saying, What nonsense are you spouting? How could a girl speak such words? Your master would never become Taoist friends with her. Just so she isn't worthy? Blood Prison Great Saint chimed in, feeling annoyed with Lu Lingjun, also an ascender, ever since she had called him a stupid cow. An XN giggled behind her hand and said, I finally understand why the master refuses to accept those female companions. Indeed, there's no need. They would only drag you down. She admired Guan greatly. The master truly gave without expecting anything in return. What woman could resist his charisma? And who would have thought that Sword Venerable Fudao would be a valley master at the Supreme Sect? Such a waste of talent. The master really has patience. An XN silently vowed to herself to become a great cultivator like her master, hidden amidst the mortal coil, watching over the swirling winds of the world with a smile. If she could truly surpass her senior brother and junior brothers, she would also conceal her cultivation level, watching the two of them vie against each other with a smile. Just by thinking about it, an XIN felt a surge of excitement. At that moment, a vast aura descended, dispersing the sea of clouds and fluttering in Zin's long hair and gown. She looked up and her eyes instinctively widened. There before her was a green mountain reflection stretching across the sky, larger than all the massive peaks in front of them. Guan remained expressionless. His reason for coming today was for this very item. It was an Immortal Path Supreme Treasure belonging to Mortal World Peak. Chapter 329, Fu Xinxiu Qingtian Peak. When the azure mountain shadows hung suspended in the sky, disciples from various peaks flew out, looking up at this magnificent scene. Guan did not stop, taking Blood Prison Great Saint and an XN toward Dingtian Peak. An XN, feeling the aura of the mountains and cultivators along the way, was secretly astonished, realizing that Mortal World Peak truly was unfathomable, seeing that Senior Lu hadn't spoken falsely. The oppressive force of the azure mountain shadows lingered for a long time, enveloping the entire domain of Mortal World Peak, prompting discussions among the disciples from all peaks. Upon reaching Dingtian Peak, Guan flew toward the mountaintop. Only then did an XIN truly feel the immense size and height of these mountains. Thinking that such a vast mountain belonged to her master, and Zin's gaze toward Guan was filled with admiration. Soon they arrived at the top of the mountain, and as soon as they landed, Zhu Xinglan, the leading disciple of Dingtian Peak, appeared and came forward to greet Guan with a salute. What's the situation? Guan asked. Zhu Xinglan replied, its main peak's Fu Xinxiu subduing an Immortal Path Supreme Treasure. He is the future master of the main peak and the disciple with the strongest talent in 1,000,000 years in Mortal World Peak. There was a complex tone in his voice when he mentioned Fu Xinxiu. Guan looked up at the azure mountain shadow in the sky and laughed. That's quite a commotion. For such a carefree primordial immortal to subdue an Immortal Path Supreme Treasure, it seemed to be quite strenuous. It seemed that this Immortal Path Supreme Treasure was somewhat special. Zhu Xinglan answered, this Immortal Path Supreme Treasure was found beyond outer heaven by the Peak Master, without the suppression of Qi Fortune from the Holy Court. Truly subduing its immortal spirit would raise quite a ruckus, and there have been those who failed before. Guan nodded and then asked about Dingtian Peak's recent situation, learning that there was nothing requiring his intervention. Only then did Guan start walking toward the medicine garden. An Xian and Blood Prison Great Saint followed behind him, with Zhu Xinglan accompanying them, yet his gaze occasionally shifted toward the sky, admiring the vast azure mountain shadow. Who wouldn't want to possess an immortal path supreme treasure? It's just that their numbers were limited, and it wasn't something one could have just by wishing for it. While picking medicinal herbs, Guan introduced them to an Xian. The majority of the medicinal herbs here were unheard of by an Xian, so she listened intently and wasn't distracted by the phenomenon in the sky. Zhu Xinglan was inwardly curious about the origins of this girl, feeling that their master treated her differently compared to others. And Zin's mask, crafted by Guan, was inscrutable for Zhu Xinglan, who was at the 9th layer of Wandering Immortal Realm, and he didn't dare probe with his divine sense. An hour later, the vast oppressive force enveloping Mortal World Peak began to dissolve, and the azure mountain shadow in the sky remained, even becoming more detailed, revealing trees that swayed with the wind as if they were truly real. You can go on with your duties, there's no need to follow us. Guan, just stepping out from a section of the medicine garden, turned his head and spoke to Zhu Xinglan, who immediately saluted and then disappeared into thin air. Attracted by the sudden disappearance, an Xian looked at Guan and asked, "Master, what's his cultivation level?" Guan casually replied, "Wandering Immortal Realm 9 layers." And Zin's pupils, hidden beneath the mask, involuntarily widened. She had heard of Wandering Immortals. The 9-fingered Divine Lord who took first place in the Heavenly Ranking Tournament was a Wandering Immortal. To reach the 9th layer of Wandering Immortal Realm, didn't that mean the person just now might be even stronger than the 9-fingered Divine Lord? Feeling the pressure, an Xian thought of the multitude of disciples at Dingtian Peak, each seemingly an immortal, commanding such formidable power. How could she not feel the pressure, when her master was training her with such focus? At the very least, she couldn't disappoint her master. Master and disciple walked and chatted along the mountain path, with Blood Prison Great Saint trailing behind. As the sea breeze blew and they looked out over the entire world, they seemed so insignificant. The azure mountain shadow in the sky began to scatter, and not long after, the sky returned to its original state, resplendently blue. Master, if you compared that immortal path supreme treasure to Martial Uncle Li Ya's divine exotic city, which would be stronger? An Xian couldn't help but ask. The strength of divine exotic city left a deep impression on her when Li Ya participated in the Heavenly Ranking Tournament. The strength of an immortal path supreme treasure is related to the user's cultivation level. Li Ya is not yet able to fully unleash divine exotic city's power, Guan answered. The mightiest feature of an immortal path supreme treasure is its eternal indestructibility. Currently there are many immortal path supreme treasures in the world, all passed down from generation to generation, each symbolizing the lifetime of a 9 heavens of immortal path being. After hearing this, an Xian became even more curious about immortal path supreme treasure. Guan brought her here today to broaden her horizons, to understand the world structure, and to comprehend what an immortal path supreme treasure is. What's that? Blood Prison Great Saint suddenly spoke up, and an Xian turned her head to look, seeing a streak of azure light racing from the distant horizon of the sea, stirring up huge waves. A smile appeared on Guan's face. He thought to himself as expected. The immortal spirit of that immortal path supreme treasure was not simple, which was also the reason Guan came to watch the excitement today. An immortal path supreme treasure from beyond outer heaven implied there was a scheme behind it. That treasure heading straight for Dingtian Peak was probably related to the demon fetus within. As the azure light drew closer, an Xian and Blood Prison Great Saint's expressions drastically changed, a feeling of indescribable panic born in their hearts. This panic emerged but vanished in an instant because Guan stepped forward. An Xian and Blood Prison Great Saint subconsciously looked toward Guan. Guan raised his hand to grasp, then clenched his fist, and the distant azure light immediately disappeared. An Xian and Blood Prison Great Saint turned to look but could no longer see the azure light. It was as if the previous sight was just an illusion. Both looked toward Guan's outstretched hand. Unfortunately, Guan's fist remained closed, shielding from their view whatever lay within his palm. A figure descended from the sky and landed at the edge of a cliff, maintaining a distance of 10 steps from Guan. He frowned as he looked at Guan. Fu Xinxiu, Carefree Primordial Immortal Realm, 5 layers 1684877500000/250000. Seeing the other's lifespan, Guan felt he indeed deserved the reputation of the #1 talent of Mortal World Peak. In the future he might even surpass the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma. Fu Xinxiu asked, "Could it be Senior Meng Lang?" "Meng Lang?" And Zin's gaze turned curious. Guan, on the other hand, laughed and said, "This treasure headed straight for my Dingdian Peak. Could it be considered fated for me?" Fu Shengxi's face drastically changed. After all his troubles, was the treasure taken by someone else? Although he did not attend the Millennium Summit, how could Fu Xinxiu not know that a great cultivator had been added to Mortal World Peak? One capable of eradicating the Elder of Mo Hen, such a great power was definitely beyond his contend. Moreover, the fact that the other party could easily seize the treasure demonstrated a vast gap between them. For a moment, Fu Xinxiu was unsure what to do. His master, Taoist Lord Yongyin, had instructed him to try his best to recruit Meng Lang. That was an immortal path supreme treasure. Furthermore, one with intact restrictions, uncontrolled by the Holy Court, an immortal path supreme treasure. Senior. Fu Xinxiu gritted his teeth, wanting to test Guan's attitude. Guan suddenly opened his hand, revealing a tiny azure mountain that glistened faintly with light within his palm. Upon seeing the mountain, Fu Shengxi's gaze was fixed and could not be moved. An Xian and blood prison great saint, although unclear about the newcomer's realm, could tell that his nature and temperament were extraordinary. Could the little azure mountain in their master's hand be the immortal path supreme treasure? He could seize an immortal path supreme treasure with a mere wave of his hand? And Zin's heart filled with admiration. "If I let go, are you sure you can catch it?" Guan asked with a chuckle. Fu Xinxiu hurriedly replied, "I will do my utmost." Immediately, Guan threw the tiny azure mountain into the distance, casually launching it 1,000,000 miles away. Fu Xinxiu appeared out of thin air beside the little mountain, his mana swirling around his hand as he reached out to grasp it. Boom! A terrifying momentum suddenly exploded, tossing Fu Xinxiu away, and his face grew extremely unsightly. The little mountain turned into an azure beam, once again streaking toward Dingtian Peak. As Fu Xinxiu turned around, he saw that the light had vanished. He flew swiftly toward Dingtian Peak, landing again on the edge of the cliff with a complex expression as he looked at Guan. The little mountain once again floated above Guan's palm. That moment, several figures appeared out of nowhere in the air behind Fu Xinxiu, all of whom were the authorities of Mortal World Peak. Even the master of the main peak, Taoist Lord Yongyin, had come. Baizia's gaze fell on the little mountain in Guan's hand and then shifted to Fu Xinxiu, revealing a mocking expression. Guan turned to Taoist Lord Yongyin and laughed. "Peak Master, this treasure kept smashing into my Dingtian Peak. I had no choice but to claim it." Taoist Lord Yongyin seemed to realize something, a hint of understanding crossing his eyes, and then he laughed. "This is Qingtian Peak, sought by one of my juniors in outer heaven. If Taoist friend likes it, I am willing to bestow it upon Taoist friend." Upon hearing this, Fu Xinxiu immediately became anxious and looked at Taoist Lord Yongyin, saying, "Master. Well then, I will find you another immortal path supreme treasure in the future. You have no fate with this one. It's not reasonable to blame others," Taoist Lord Yongyin said with finality. Although he was only one minor realm higher than Fu Xinxiu was raised by him, so facing his decision, Fu Xinxiu had no choice but to give up. He took a deep breath, gave Guan a salute and then turned and left. The other peak masters looked at each other in dismay, each harboring their own thoughts. Taoist Lord Yongyin, looking back at Guan, said, "The treasure indeed has a destiny with Dingtian Peak. I hope Taoist friend can protect Dingtian Peak well." Guan nodded and said, "If Mortal World Peak needs me, I will also take action." Taoist Lord Yongyan's face revealed a smile, and then he took his leave. The other peak masters successively saluted and dispersed. Guan felt a hint of regret. Baizia didn't seek him out for a chat, their relationship seemed to have grown distant. After everyone left, an Xang couldn't help but ask, "Just like that, you obtained an immortal path supreme treasure?" It was her first time seeing her master so assertive. And of course, Sword Venerable Fu Dao had always been domineering in his actions. Guan was just gentle toward cultivators of lower realms. Blood Prison Great Saint stared intently at Qingtian Peak in Guan's hand, suddenly feeling that he too might one day possess such a treasure. As long as he performed well. Guan proceeded to walk toward the top of the mountain, while he used his divine thought to probe Qingtian Peak in his hand. Qingtian Peak had already fostered an immortal spirit, apparently alive for many years, far more powerful than divine exotic immortal spirit. After all, it was able to break free from the suppression of a carefree primordial immortal. Soon, his divine thought captured a heavenly demon, hidden within the walls of a dilapidated temple within Qingtian Peak, extremely concealed and probably difficult to detect even for the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma. Practice diligently. Once you are strong enough, I will give this treasure for you to use, Guan said to an XN beside him, who was full of curiosity, smiling gently. Chapter 330, Awakening Really? When an XN heard Guan's words, she was instantly excited, and the eyes of the blood prison great saint also turned fiery. Indeed, the master would not be stingy with the treasures of the immortal path. After returning to the mountaintop, Guan had an XN start cultivating while he went back to the house alone. Sitting on his bed, Guan's gaze fell on Qingtian Peak. He first used his divine thought to erase any marks and restrictions within Qingtian Peak that made him wary. The immortal spirit of Qingtian Peak was very submissive and did not resist Guan. Instead, it was quite jubilant. After taking safety precautions, Guan began to make Qingtian Peak recognize him as its master. With the compliance of the Qingtian immortal spirit, it took Guan less than an hour to refine the restrictions of Qingtian Peak and take control of the soul of the Qingtian immortal spirit, making it completely serve him. With the Qingtian immortal spirit in hand, this would be the combat power of a carefree primordial immortal. Moreover, Guan felt that the power contained in Qingtian Peak was greater than the Seven Stars Mirror, the Immortal King Crown and the Divine Exotic City. The Immortal King Crown and Divine Exotic City had been damaged and needed a long time to recover. The Seven Stars Mirror hadn't suffered much damage but was slightly weaker than Qingtian Peak, however, the difference was limited. After all this, the corners of Guan's mouth curved upward. Next, it was like capturing a turtle in a jar. Forget it, let me leave him hanging for a while. After all, he can't escape or pass any messages outside. He pretended not to know that a heavenly demon was hidden inside Qingtian Peak, and the Qingtian immortal spirit was completely unaware. During the process of making Qingtian Peak his own, Guan peeked into the memory of the Qingtian immortal spirit. It spent most of its time either asleep or sealed by a strong force, unaware of the filth inside it. Although unaware of the filth inside, the Qingtian immortal spirit was influenced by it. It inexplicably felt something attracting it at Dingtian Peak, thus it crashed towards Dingtian Peak. If Guan had not intervened, it planned to directly smash Dingtian Peak to force the alluring thing to reveal itself. From this perspective, the identity of the demon fetus below is not simple. Guan thought silently. He pondered whether or not to move the demon fetus elsewhere, but where could he move it to? Moving it, if awakened prematurely, wouldn't that accelerate the catastrophe? No matter, let it stay here. As for whether another heavenly demon will come later, he didn't care. He would destroy any heavenly demon with lesser cultivation than his. As for those with higher cultivation than his, if they could infiltrate the great heavenly spirit land, wouldn't the holy court have been penetrated long ago? Guan shrank Qingtian Peak into an accessory and hung it on his belt. His ultimate elusive body was evolved from the practice of the demon shadow divine skill. Its main use now was to block all causality deduction, which also protected Qingtian Peak when it was attached to his body, making it indeducible. It wasn't necessary to activate the ultimate elusive body to block causality deduction. After mastering it, he could block it permanently. In such a case, releasing some causality on the surface could easily misguide others' deductions. The ultimate elusive body also had combat capabilities, allowing his physical soul to become elusive, dodging spells and divine skills, providing infinite uses in battle. Guan stood up, stretched lazily and loosened his body. Heavenly demons, the holy court. It's really hard to achieve true peace in this world. Guan reflected internally, yet he faced no pressure. There's still much time ahead, take it slow. The conflicts of the moment mean little, who laughs last is what truly matters. As the seasons changed, a new year arrived. Just after the new year, Guan was in the forest instructing an XAN on chi absorption cultivation. The stepping path of age's step was too profound and enigmatic. Even with Guan's personal guidance, an XAN still found it difficult to master. The current goal for an XAN was to discover the patterns of the stepping path of age's step. An XAN moved swiftly, appearing 5 steps away in an instant before stumbling and falling to the ground. She sat on the ground, feeling dizzy and shaky, her eyes closed and mouth slightly open, which made Guan want to laugh. He didn't help an XAN regain her composure. This was a necessary path for her. She stayed in that spot for nearly half an hour before fully regaining her senses. Turning to Guan, she gave a bitter smile and said, "Master, this technique is incredibly profound. Do I really need to learn it?" Guan, holding the 7 stars mirror like a fan, chuckled and said, "You must learn it. Just absorbing qi is not enough, and besides, cultivating divine skills will enhance your understanding too." Anaxian made a mournful face but didn't give up. Instead, she stood up again, ready to continue practicing the stepping path of age's step. The thought of the previous dizzy sensation made Anaxian want to vomit. She raised her hands, patted her face, and tried not to think about the discomfort. At that moment, she turned her head and saw a golden glow in the sky outside the forest, rapidly stretching out and magnificent like the sunset. Guan also looked up, his expression calm. Is it finally coming? Meanwhile, overseas on an island, Yang Jian and Heaven Sect stood side by side. Yang Jian gazed at his right hand, having just crushed a golden jade stone given by Heaven Sect, with his palm covered by a golden sphere and tiny golden stars scattering into the air. He appeared expressionless, yet he was extremely nervous inside. Merging with his past memories, was he still himself? Heaven Sect looked at him and comfortingly said, "Don't worry, this process won't be painful. I've already set up formations and no one will disturb you." Yang Jian looked up at the sky where the golden glow covered the sky, so beautiful. But this phenomenon? Yang Jian hesitated. Heaven Sect stroked his beard and said, "Don't worry, this phenomenon covers a vast area, and you don't have to worry." Yang Jian took a deep breath and refocused on his palm. Then, the golden stars rising from his palm began to fly toward his face, eventually entering his eyes. The wind picked up on the island as the world's spiritual energy surged towards Yang Jian. The golden light in his palm brightened, illuminating his face while his eyes flickered with different scenes. Seeing this, Heaven Sect smiled, slowly backing away to give Yang Jian space. Elsewhere, inside Supreme Sect, Guan could see the heaven and earth rules enveloping Yang Jian, with yin-yang rules being the most intense. He couldn't understand the process, but he felt that Yang Jian wouldn't encounter any mishap. There was no other soul in that golden jade stone, so there was no risk of soul snatching. "Master, why has the sky changed color?" Anaxian curiously asked. "Your fellow disciple is awakening his past memories," Guan said nonchalantly as he gazed at the sky. "Past memories?" Anaxian immediately became interested, and Guan did not hide the truth, revealing Yang Jian's causality. Hearing that Yang Jian was the reincarnation of a holy king from the holy court, Anaxian was even more shocked. "No wonder he's so powerful, Master. Could my fellow senior brother also be the reincarnation of a great power?" Anaxian asked, staring intently at Guan, her eyes apprehensive. "Probably not." Guan's answer left Anaxian feeling disappointed. If Anhao was a reincarnation of a great figure, that would mean she was not too bad. The problem was her comparison to Anhao. However, everyone might have a past life. "Once you reach a certain realm, you will understand," Guan said and then looked away. He stood up and said, "Let's stop here for today." Upon hearing this, Nzin's face revealed a relieved smile. She followed Guan's steps. "Master, if Yang Jian awakens his past memories, does that mean he will become the Holy King again? Is the Holy King powerful?" "What he becomes is up to him to decide. As for the power of a Holy King, let me tell you something. The Great Cold Demon Sect previously served a Holy King." "Ah? A Holy King could command a sect like the Great Cold Demon Sect?" "Don't be overly dramatic. Thinking about it now, having such a powerful Holy King as my junior brother feels like a dream. I'm telling you this, not for you to marvel, but for you to clearly know your own goals." Master, I will practice diligently." "With your teachings, what is a Holy King?" The master and disciple continued chatting as they returned to the valley. Guan used the power of causality to alter their conversation, so he wasn't worried about exposure. After reaching the divine thought true immortal realm, Guan studied causality and destiny the most and controlled his own power of causality more and more skillfully. Meanwhile, every being in the Broken Sea domain looked up at the heavenly phenomenon. Guan even saw some powerful figures flying out from the Holy Land where the Holy Court was located, rushing towards the Broken Sea domain. Fortunately, Yang Jian was not awakening in the Taizong continent, otherwise the continent would face trouble again. The golden phenomenon lasted a day and a night, and by noon the next day, Shenzhen came to visit Guan. After closing the door, she started setting up a formation and busied herself for a while before coming to sit at the table. "Yo, still reading Green Hero Travel? Why not read my Supreme Secret Records?" Shenzhen teased. Guan replied, "Supreme Secret Records is too short. The implication was, when will you write something new? Shenzhen seemed not to understand. She took out a scroll from her storage bag and spread it out on the table. She had actually drawn the golden phenomenon from yesterday. The golden sky enveloped the land and mountains, showcasing the majestic atmosphere of the immense landscape. Guan noticed that as the scroll was unrolled, the heaven and earth rules gradually drew near. Once again she used her painting to move the heaven and earth rules. Yesterday's phenomenon was no simple matter. It gave me an indescribable feeling. Shenzhen began to share her thoughts on her painting process. However, Guan caught a special power emerging from the depths of the heaven and earth rules. This power somewhat resembled the inheritance left by Heaven's sect. Could it be that Yang Jian's past life was also related to the heavenly Tao represented by Heaven's sect? Besides this power, Guan was interested in the reincarnation rules. This painting also attracted the reincarnation rules. Heaven and earth rules are omnipresent, only elusive to mortal spirits. In the eyes of a divine thought true immortal, heaven and earth comprise many layers. Beneath the heaven and earth rules lies even deeper forces of order. After Shenzhen introduced her painting process, she proudly asked, "What do you think? It seems you've sensed my painting intent. Want you comment?" Guan focused on the scroll and replied, "It indeed makes one easily lose their mind. You are very impressive." "That's right." Shenzhen raised her jaw, extremely proud. Just as Guan was about to speak, the scroll suddenly burst into flames, startling Shenzhen as she tried to extinguish it. "Don't approach. This fire is not right," Guan said sternly, stopping Shenzhen from acting rashly. Chapter 331. The Great Emperor from the Silent Destruction Domain. Guan's gaze remained fixed on the burning scroll on the table while his divine sense locked onto outer heaven. Above the great heavenly spirit land hung 7 suns. From within one of those suns, the eyes of a mysterious colossal creature opened and stared directly at Guan's attic. It was this creature that caused the scroll to burn. Guan was not perturbed. The beings in those 7 days all possessed the cultivation level of the carefree primordial immortal, posing no threat to him, but he could feel that they bore great karmic debts and were backed by a mighty presence. Thinking about it, it was normal. After all, if the Holy Court could contain them, either their patron was the Holy Court or their patron was feared by the Holy Court. Regardless of the situation, Guan did not want to stir trouble unnecessarily. Soon, the scroll on the table turned to ash, yet it miraculously did not affect the table's surface. Shenzhen asked, somewhat shaken, "What was that just now?" Even with her divinity transformation realm cultivation level, she could not understand how the flames appeared and vanished. At this moment, she felt as if she had incurred the wrath of the heavens. Guan took a deep breath and said, "I'm not sure, it seems like you shouldn't have painted yesterday's vision." Shenzhen frowned and asked, "Only yesterday?" "It seems so, since you've painted other pictures before without such events occurring," Guan replied. Thinking about it, the karmic debt hidden by Yang Jian seemed to be related to those 7 days. Shenzhen took a deep breath and said, "Forget it, my cultivation is too weak and I certainly cannot provoke them." With her words, Guan saw the mysterious creature within the sun close its eyes. Shenzhen had managed to escape this ordeal. It was merely a warning, indicating that the mysterious beings of the 7 days were not so murderous or domineering. Guan sat back down and teased, "You're quite something, managing to draw a picture that provokes the wrath of the heavens." Shenzhen did not take pride in that but earnestly said, "Indeed, I felt I was capturing an obscure and mysterious state while painting, and each time after I finished painting, it became easier for me to cultivate. Many confusions in cultivation would also become clearer." "It seems you're also about to undergo a profound transformation," Guan said enviously. Only then did Shenzhen smile, snorting, "Be nicer to me from now on, perhaps I'll become an immortal someday." "All right, immortal Shen. Good boy. How shameless. Daring to offend a future immortal?" The two began to bicker, and the fear in Shenzhen's heart was swept away. She felt that she needed to be more cautious about her future paintings. She had to discern clearly what should be painted and what should not. An hour later, Shenzhen left. Guan then lay back in his chair and watched Yang Jian and Heaven's sect. After awakening his past life memories, Yang Jian's cultivation had not experienced substantial transformation, but his whole demeanor indeed had changed. Guan watched for a while and, confirming that Yang Jian was unharmed, withdrew his gaze. In the days that followed, Yang Jian and Heaven Sect stayed on that island, protected by Heaven Sect's formation, Many great cultivators passed by, unable to detect their existence. Until the summer came. Guan rode the blood prison Great Saint down from the transmission array platform, feeling cheerful. Just as he was about to leave, Nine-Fingered Divine Lord approached him curiously and asked, "Guan, your disciple in XN has changed significantly lately. What did you teach her?" Because Guan had previously mentored Yang Jian, he believed in Xin's changes were related to Guan, which made him more curious about the being behind Guan. The most mysterious and powerful entity in the Supreme Sect was Sword Venerable Fudao. Nine-Fingered Divine Lord had always felt that Guan was connected to Sword Venerable Fudao. Perhaps Guan's achievement in Go was related to Sword Venerable Fudao. As for the possibility that Guan was Sword Venerable Fudao, after learning Guan's age, he ceased to think in that direction. Unique Taoist sorcery, indescribable and unutterable, unless you become my disciple. Guan looked down at Nine-Fingered Divine Lord and said with a proud smile, causing Nine-Fingered Divine Lord to roll his eyes. "You know my cultivation level is quite high, and yet you dare take me as a disciple?" Nine-Fingered Divine Lord said with irritation. Guan shrugged and replied, "The accomplished can be teachers. You surely have aspects where you lag behind me. Could it be that in your life you only pursue cultivation levels? Could it be that in this world only energy absorption can lead to the Tao?" Upon hearing this, Nine-Fingered Divine Lord did not counter but fell into thought. Guan patted the head of the Blood Prison Great Saint, urging him to move forward. The Blood Prison Great Saint had been cultivating the primordial reincarnation skill for years. Though his cultivation level was still sealed, he was hopeful about the future. 1,000 years from now he would surely become an immortal. Nine-Fingered Divine Lord turned his head and asked, "Can one also achieve the Tao through playing Go?" "Who can say for sure? No matter what you do, as long as you put your heart into it, everything is possible," Guan replied casually. Nine-Fingered Divine Lord had clearly been seriously injured. His cultivation level was certainly not just that of a wandering immortal, but Guan was not interested in his past. Watching Guan's retreating figure, Nine-Fingered Divine Lord sensed a transcendental aura from this young man. He seemed to have seen through the mundane secular world, appearing more like an immortal than actual immortals. Thus, it seemed that Sword Venerable Fudao remained in the Supreme Sect perhaps for this young man? This speculation made Nine-Fingered Divine Lord increasingly convinced. It appeared staying in the Supreme Sect was the right choice. Nine-Fingered Divine Lord looked toward Divine Heart Sun, who was reading under a tree. Previously he thought Divine Heart Sun was possessed, but now upon seeing him again, he suddenly felt that Divine Heart Sun might also achieve the Tao. Then looking at the third Medicine Valley, he had a strong feeling. In the years to come, this Medicine Valley would spawn many beings who would stir the winds and clouds of the world. This intrigued him, and anticipation bubbled up in his heart. He would wait and see what kind of person Sword Venerable Fudao's chosen land could nurture. Elsewhere, Guan went upstairs. He closed the door of his room, sat down in the chair, and took the miniature Qingtian peak that had become a piece of ornament at his waist, placing it on the table. Today he felt a slight anomaly within Qingtian peak, related to that mysterious heavenly demon. That fellow couldn't restrain himself anymore. Guan's divine sense probed into Qingtian peak, which also concealed a realm within it. Although not as extensive as the realms within Divine Exotic City, this realm was broader than the Taizong continent. At that moment, inside a dilapidated temple, Guan's divine sense avatar walked in. Sunlight pierced through the worn temple walls, elongating Guan's shadow. Guan approached a wall crowded with ancient paintings, pitted and aged, their history unknown. "Come out, let's talk. Give me a reason and I want to erase you," Guan stated emotionlessly, his gaze fixed on the wall. As the words fell, wisps of demonic chi seeped from the surface of the dilapidated wall. Even in broad daylight, they appeared haunting and horrifying. Shortly after, a gaunt, black-clad old man crawled out from the demonic chi as if transcending time. His eyes brimming with bloodshot veins, he locked his gaze on Guan the moment he emerged. Upon standing up, he asked in a deep voice, "Who exactly are you and what do you want?" Guan answered, "You impact Qingtian Peak toward my mountain. You ask me what I want?" Upon hearing this, the old man's expression grew even grimmer, and he fell silent, his eyes flickering. "Are you here because of the demon fetus?" Guan asked. Upon hearing this, the old man's face changed drastically, and his body began to tremble. He stared intently at Guan and asked, "What have you done to him?" "I haven't touched him yet, but the trouble he has caused me seems to be growing." Guan's tone remained indifferent, making it hard for the old man to gauge his thoughts. The old man hesitated before speaking. You and us bear no enmity? Guan remained silent. Emboldened, the old man continued, if you do not wish to be entangled in this great karma, it would be wise to leave this place. The demon fetus is a reincarnation of the great emperor from the silent destruction domain, gestated for tens of thousands of years and immovable, with more heavenly demons yet to descend. Guan pondered internally but asked aloud, so, you have already established contacts with some of the upper echelons of the holy court? The old man answered, if you truly don't wish to involve yourself in this karma, it's best not to inquire further. Inquiring more will inevitably alert certain beings. When Guan put forward this question, it indicated to the old man that Guan was not connected to the holy court, so he did not wish to make an enemy of Guan. Given Guan's methods in suppressing Qingtian Peak, he knew he was no match. What is the purpose of your infiltration into the great heavenly spirit land? It wouldn't be to target the beings of this realm, would it? So, where could I possibly flee to? Guan asked slowly. He was also making a decision. Whether to leave mortal world Peak. Logically, if he wanted to avoid trouble, he should leave. The universe is vast. There are always places to hide. Besides, our plans cannot commence in the short term, the old man replied, sensing Guan's intention to withdraw. He felt more confident. What was the cultivation level of the demon fetus in his previous life? Guan inquired. The great emperor in his previous life was an entity of the immortal 8th layer heaven. It won't be difficult for him to reach the immortal 7th layer heaven in this life, the old man replied. Even though the old man was a carefree primordial immortal, to him, reaching the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma realm was challenging, not to mention higher realms. The immortal 7th layer heaven was already in existence that could traverse the universe in his mind, unless those eternal beings took action. Immortal 8th layer heaven. Guan's expression turned ugly, but he was slightly relieved internally. The 7th layer was the Tao void mysterious immortal, and the 8th layer was the divine thought true immortal realm where he belonged. He was at the 9th level of divine thought true immortal realm. The old man, thinking Guan had been frightened, continued, as long as you leave this place, even if I find the demon fetus, it will take thousands of years to fully form him. You have plenty of time to find a new place for cultivation. Thousands of years? The pressure in Guan's heart sharply decreased. If it took the old man thousands of years with his help, wouldn't it take tens of thousands of years without him? Guan spoke, allow me a few more years to think. I should have that much time, right? The old man did not develop hostility toward him, so he wanted to give the old man a chance. Upon hearing this, the old man's expression relaxed considerably, and he raised his hand in salute, saying, of course, I hope you can see reason and not delay your future prospects. He could not escape Qingtian Peak, nor could he send out a message. He could only try to maintain good relations with Guan by blending softness with firmness. Chapter 332 Earth Element Spirit Guan set down the Qingtian Peak and, after his conversation with the man in black came to an end, his heart grew calm. In situations where the threat was not that great, he naturally wouldn't run away. He would only preserve himself when utterly powerless. Moreover, there was a time difference between higher and lower realms. 10 or 100 years might be lengthy for beings of lower realms, but for immortal path life, it was but a fleeting moment. Anyway, the man in black couldn't run away. Guan decided to keep him for the time being to see what sort of realization he would come to. Guan raised his hand and beckoned, attracting a piece of paper from across the space. He was ready to write another secret book. The sun set and the moon rose. Time turned its pages day by day. Winter snow inevitably arrived. Before the world fell into a blanket of white, Guan went to the wooden fence to enjoy the snowscape. He hadn't stood there long before Ji Xiaoyu walked over, standing side by side with him. Ji Xiaoyu didn't look up at the sky but fixed her gaze on a distant Anexin. Anexin was carrying a plump white spirit rat, constantly moving her little mouth, clearly saying something to the white spirit rat. She's progressing so fast, Ji Xiaoyu whispered. Could she not? Whenever Guan had time, he would assist an Xin in entering the way. Although her lifespan didn't increase rapidly, it made her cultivation twice as effective with half the effort. He genuinely intended to cultivate an Xin to surpass an Hao and Yang Jian. It's alright. Her cultivation level is growing very slowly, Guan spoke. Due to the primordial reincarnation skill, and Xin's cultivation level was always suppressed. Even if she were to release her cultivation level in the future, it would be concealed, with her apparent cultivation level controlled at the Foundation establishment realm. It seemed that Guan would have to tell an Xan to restrain herself a bit more, since more and more people had started to notice the changes in her. The Ji family recently discovered an undersea secret realm and invited me to go. I could take your disciple along, what do you think? Ji Xiaoyu asked. Upon hearing this, Guan hurriedly shook his head. An Xan is timid, there's no need to take her. I'll be there, she won't encounter any mishaps. It's unnecessary. It's not something I wish to see to burden you. Is that so? Yes. I just feel that her aptitude is improving. Staying in Medicine Valley might bury her talent. I don't like to hear that. Would I delay her? Guan glared at Ji Xiaoyu. He had intentionally said this to make Ji Xiaoyu believe that the high-level cultivator guiding an Xan was someone else. Ji Xiaoyu's mouth lifted into a smile. All right then, I want to invite her. I want to see what you can make of her. Guan smiled. Then when are you leaving? And for how long? This was not the first time Ji Xiaoyu had set out, but Guan felt that the undersea secret realm would again cause trouble. Perhaps this was what it meant to be a great fortune of energy movement. Continuous trials and tribulations, always narrowly escaping disaster and turning peril into safety. I leave tomorrow morning. The competition for sea resources among the noble families is quite fierce. Ji Xiaoyu started talking about the situation at sea. Despite the vastness of the ocean and the richness of its resources, the coveted areas had long been divided by the major powers, making it difficult to gain a foothold at sea. The Ji family, wanting to occupy a region of their own and lay down roots for development, eyed the secret realm. That oceanic secret realm was the source of abundant spiritual energy nearby. Immortal path beings didn't care about such a realm, but those in the mystic heart realm would fight tooth and nail over it. She shifted the conversation from the Ji family to other significant happenings at sea as Guan listened with keen interest. During their conversation, a powerful divine sense swept across the Taizong continent. Guan was used to this. The other party was probably searching for Yang Jian. Yang Jian, having awakened memories from past lives, shocked many cultivators of the Holy Court, who were still searching for him. Yang Jian didn't run around but focused on cultivating on that island. At sea, only those in the immortal path realm have the power to protect themselves. Even if one achieves nirvana, walking the sea still requires great caution, Ji Xiaoyu remarked, her cultivation having grown higher and allowing her to perceive more. The experiences from her past lives' dreams only deepened her reverence. Guan smiled, with your talent, you'll achieve nirvana sooner or later. Let alone at sea, right now there was a divine sense of a heaven and earth flying immortal sweeping the continent. Most beings were completely unaware of this. What about you? Ji Xiaoyu turned to look at Guan, asking with a calm tone. Nirvana? I'm afraid I won't have the chance. Guan shook his head and chuckled freely, devoid of any constraints. Ji Xiaoyu offered no consolation, knowing that nirvana was a threshold for mortal spirits to break through fate, a challenge that no one else could assist with. She followed Guan as they both looked up at the snow falling from the sky. The snowflakes began to fall more heavily. On the sprawling seas, Leah sat on the back of a black eagle that sped along, flapping its wings. The sea breeze tousled Leah's long hair, but his eyes remained fixed on the horizon, unblinking. The divine exotic immortal spirit perched on Leah's shoulder, head tilted, asked, have you really thought this through? Without using my power, it will be difficult for you to cross the waters ahead. I can sense a dense demon energy there, hiding a great demon of the immortal path. Liya's expression was stoic as he answered softly, save me when I'm close to death. Ever since his last visit to the divine exotic realm and learning about the origins of divine exotic city, Liya's pride had shattered. He didn't blame the primordial ancestor but was rather more grateful. However, he was filled with resentment towards himself. Liya, oh Liya, what have you been raging about all these years? All this time he had always needed the primordial ancestor, needed others' help. Without divine exotic city, what was he? Upon returning to the Star Sea congregations, Liya secluded himself for cultivation and pondered over this question. This seclusion lasted for many years. He had now made up his mind. What he needed to do was improve his physical constitution and insight. If and how could cultivate the ancient treasure body, why couldn't he? So, he embarked on the journey to pursue the treasure body. He learned from an elder that a treasure body had once fallen in a certain sea region, possibly leaving behind an opportunity related to the treasure body. Liya, actually you're still young and you're already quite formidable, the divine exotic immortal spirit consoled, scratching its head. Having spent many years with Liya, it had grown fond of him and didn't want him to take extreme measures. "Don't worry, I will measure my abilities and refrain from making the primordial ancestor take action again," Leah said calmly, his eyes resolute. Following his gaze, dark clouds appeared at the far end of the sea horizon, small but clearly an ominous sign. Meanwhile, on the path of Dingtian Peak on Mortal World Peak, Guan rode the Blood Prison Great Saint while an XN walked in front of the Blood Prison Great Saint, occasionally looking back and sharing a laugh. The sea breeze blew, stirring Guan's hair by the temples. He withdrew his gaze from spying on Leah and looked towards an XN. "How many of the medicinal herbs did you memorize today?" It had been 8 years since Ji Xiaoyu left for the Undersea Secret Realm. She had not returned for 8 years, but as Guan saw she wasn't in mortal peril, he allowed her to face the ordeal alone. During these 8 years, Guan taught an Xian no other spells or divine skills. Aside from chi absorption cultivation, she only practiced the stepping path of ages step daily. Wearing a mask, an Xian turned back and said, "Master, rest assured, I remember them all." "Good, go back and write them into a book so other disciples can increase their knowledge in the future," Guan nodded. An Xian was about to reply when 2 figures descended from the sky and landed on the stone steps ahead. Upon seeing these 2 people, an Xian immediately tensed up. They were Taoist Lord Yongyin and Fu Xinxiu from the main peak. An Xian thought they were there to demand the Immortal Path's supreme treasure. Taoist Lord Yongyin raised his hand in salute, saying, "May I inquire if Taoist friend has time? My disciple and I have a matter to request." Upon hearing this, Guan responded, "Speak directly, what's the matter?" Taoist Lord Yongyin glanced at Fu Xinxiu and said, "Since Qingtian Peak has no affinity with my disciple, I have found another great opportunity for him, located within the Sea Demon Thunder domain. It is a treasure left by an ancient great power named Earth Element Spirit. Every 100,000 years it congeals one spirit, and its appearance is not fixed, but it can be confirmed to only appear within the Sea Demon Thunder domain, Earth Element Spirit." It was the first time Guan had heard of this and he also became interested. According to Taoist Lord Yongyin, that ancient great power was unfathomable in his cultivation. Before passing away, he used some great divine power to refine his Immortal Path's supreme treasure, submerging it into the Sea Demon Thunder domain, merging it with the ocean, rendering it unfindable. It was only when someone accidentally acquired the Earth Element Spirit that the veil of this opportunity was lifted. The Earth Element Spirit could strengthen the soul of a cultivator, and even demons were eager to obtain it. Later on, the Holy Court took charge of the Sea Demon Thunder domain and a holy god decreed that the Thunder domain was land without an owner. No sect was allowed to occupy it, and regarding the Earth Element Spirit, it all relied on one's power. Mortal World Peak had also sought the Earth Element Spirit. Either fate was there but the affinity was not, or they found the Earth Element Spirit but lacked the power to fight for it. Hearing about the anomaly in the Sea Demon Thunder domain, which might signal the birth of an Earth Element Spirit, Taoist Lord Yongyin thought of Guan. "Taoist friend Meng, if you could take action I would be deeply grateful," Taoist Lord Yongyin sincerely said, convinced that Guan had surpassed the carefree immortal realm. Such a great cultivator aiding them would surely clinch the Earth Element Spirit without difficulty. Guan feigned hesitation. "Will this offend other sects?" Taoist Lord Yongyin replied, "The worthy receive treasures, don't they? I've heard that Taoist friend enjoys cultivating medicinal herbs, so I'm willing to transplant a batch of Immortal Path medicinal herbs to Dingtian Peak from the main peak. How about that?" Taoist friend is too kind. "I've already said that if Mortal World Peak encounters an issue, it'll take action. When do we set out?" Guan spoke earnestly, bringing a smile to Taoist Lord Yangyin's face. Fu Shengxi's mouth twitched but he said nothing. Having had Qingtian Peak taken by Guan, it was impossible for him not to feel resentment, yet now he could only maintain courtesy. "How about in 3 days?" Taoist Lord Yongyin asked. "No problem, we'll set out after 3 days then," Guan nodded. Chapter 333 Predecessor 3 days passed by quickly. On that clear morning, Guan took an Xan to Mortal World Peak early without bringing the Blood Prison Great Saint, which was to say the least rather disappointing for him. The reason he didn't bring the Blood Prison Great Saint was because Guan had acquaintances in the Sea Demon domain, and he feared it would be inconvenient. As for an Xan wearing his specially made mask, it was very difficult for anyone to recognize him. An Xan who cultivated the all things form and energy art, could also conceal his aura. High-level cultivators did not guess one's identity by appearance. After arriving at Dingtian Peak, Guan read books inside the house, and so did an Xin, though her gaze drifted outside the window from time to time, waiting for the two from Taoist Lord Yongyin to arrive. Close to noon, Taoist Lord Yongyin finally arrived, bringing not only Fu Xinxiu but also a female cultivator. This female cultivator was at the second level of the carefree immortal realm, not as advanced as Fu Xinxiu, but she was older and probably sent by Taoist Lord Yongyin to lead the way. And indeed, all they heard was Taoist Lord Yongyin introduce, "This is my younger martial sister, Dao named Yongxin, known as Fairy Yongxin. She will lead the way to the Sea Demon domain this time, as I need to stay at Mortal World Peak to avoid any mishaps." Fairy Yongxin followed with a salute to Guan, who returned the gesture. "Let's get going then," said Guan directly. If they could resolve the issue today, it would be great. A portion of the medicinal herbs in the outer world cave had ripened, waiting for him to harvest. Fairy Yongxin had no objections. The group went to the courtyard, where she summoned a small red mansion. The mansion rapidly expanded, taking Guan, Fu Xinxiu, and an Xin inside before turning into a red light disappearing into the sky. Taoist Lord Yongyin stood in the courtyard, looking in the direction where the mansion disappeared, concern in his eyes. Meanwhile, inside the grand hall of the red mansion, Fairy Yongxin invited Guan to sit and talk, while an Xin looked around curiously. "You're free to wander around, there's nothing dangerous here," Fairy Yongxin said to an Xin with a gentle smile. She might not have been stunningly beautiful, but her smile was generous and tender, easily engendering goodwill. An Xin glanced at Guan, and only after seeing him nod did she dare to leave. Fu Xinxiu sat opposite Guan, his expression calm. The Sea Demon domain has already seen the appearance of a carefree primordial immortal. It's said that in these 100,000 years, a great demon has been born there, cultivating for 100,000 years, entering the realm of the carefree primordial immortal, commanding countless demon soldiers, a force not to be underestimated, said Fairy Yongxin. Guan had long ago used his divine sense to probe the Sea Demon domain. Indeed, it was dangerous and the existence of immortal path entities within was incalculable. But for him it counted for little. While Fairy Yongxin updated him about the current powers within the Sea Demon domain, she observed Guan's expressions. Noticing that Guan remained composed, she felt somewhat relieved. He must indeed be a divine immortal of wondrous dharma. Throughout the history of Mortal World Peak, divine immortals of wondrous dharma had arisen. After reaching this level, most would head to outer heaven or seek chief fortune in the Holy Court. Few remained on Mortal World Peak. They had extensively discussed Ming Lang's purpose for coming to Mortal World Peak and eventually decided to try to win him over. If this venture went smoothly, Ming Lang would then stand completely together with them at Mortal World Peak. Fairy Yongxin mentioned several names of carefree primordial immortals. In the great heavenly spirit land, those who cultivated to this realm usually had a reputation and had dealt with each other a lot. Fairy Yongxin had only encountered this great cultivator, Ming Lang, appearing out of nowhere. She suspected Ming Lang was a pseudonym but did not point it out. After she finished speaking, Guan looked at the silent Fu Xinxiu and said, "Don't worry, as long as the earth element spirit is still there, it will surely belong to you." Upon hearing this, Fu Xinxiu hastened to thank him. He felt a mix of emotions. He had been sullen ever since Guan took Qingtian Peak away from him, but hearing Guan's words, he inexplicably admired Guan. Those of us in immortal cultivation should indeed have such a spirit. Thinking of Guan seizing Qingtian Peak with a wave of his hand, Fu Shengxia's eyes flashed with ardent desire. In fact, he anticipated the earth element spirit even more than Qingtian Peak. All immortal path supreme treasures are external. It's said that the strongest among the immortal path will eventually create their own treasures, and he had always believed he could reach the summit of the 9 heavens of immortal path. More than external wealth, he valued the improvement of his own strength. In the subsequent conversation, Fu Xinxiu also started speaking, providing specific information about some carefree primordial immortals. Fairy Yongxin felt somewhat relieved. She was aware of the conflict between the two, and she hadn't expected Guan to give Fu Xinxiu a way out so readily. It seemed he was not that difficult to get along with after all. When an Xin returned to Guan's side, she felt the atmosphere was very harmonious, which was not surprising to her. In her eyes, her master always managed to get along well with others and have enjoyable interactions. "Let me help the fairy to speed up a bit," Guan said with a smile. Immediately after, Fairy Yongxin's face changed as she sensed Guan's vast, ocean-like mana. The flight speed of the red mansion surged. Fairy Yongxin suppressed the shock in her heart and asked, "Taoist friend, have you been to the sea demon domain?" "No, but I have captured it with divine sense before. This sea demon domain is not simple. You only know the surface, but inside lies a divine immortal of wondrous dharma who will be our greatest obstruction," Guan replied with a shake of his head, smiling. As he spoke, he picked up the teacup next to him and began to sip tea. Divine immortal of wondrous dharma. Fairy Yongxin couldn't maintain her composure, and her eyebrows involuntarily furrowed. Fu Xinxiu was inwardly shocked. How profound must this person's Tao level be to mention the divine immortal of wondrous dharma so casually? And Xian was filled with curiosity. What realm was the divine immortal of wondrous dharma? A realm above the wandering immortal? Without mentioning the heaven and earth flying immortal, Fairy Yongxin and Fu Xinxiu led her to mistakenly think the divine immortal of wondrous dharma realm lay immediately after the wandering immortal. He fears those above the fifth level of the divine immortal of wondrous dharma realm, Fairy Yongxin thought to herself and gazed at Guan with a mix of reverence and anticipation. In the following conversation, Fairy Yongxin dared not address Guan merely as a Taoist friend but referred to him as a senior. Guan did not shy away from this title, graciously accepting it. This made an Xan proud and she sat up straighter. Boom, the deafening thunder echoed above the ocean, with torrents of waves rising and crashing down. A black hawk skimmed through the tempest. Leah stood on the back of the hawk, his brows furrowed, murmuring, "I run into such a fierce demon aura just after entering, that old guy wouldn't have tricked me, would he?" On his shoulder, the divine exotic immortal spirit nodded frantically, saying, "I've had a bad feeling about him for a while now. He also calls himself the immortal seeking Taoist, which sounds like a bluff to me." Li Ya's brows relaxed and he whispered, "Since I'm already here, I can't leave empty-handed. If I don't find the cultivation technique for the treasure body, looking for a demon treasure to enhance chi blood isn't a bad idea either." He drew the treasure sword from his waist, a slender blade that reflected a cold light amidst the downpour. Boom! Suddenly, far out at sea, an explosion erupted, and a terrifying black shadow leapt from the water, immense and imposing as if Mount Tai itself had risen from the ocean floor and swiftly entered the clouds. The hawk beneath Leah immediately slowed down, not daring to approach rashly. Chapter 334. Is this it? A flash of red light zipped across the sea covered by storm clouds, fast as lightning. Guan and Xan, Fairy Yongxin, and Fu Xinxiu stood on the edge of the terrace, gazing over the spectacular vista of the sea demon thunder domain. Demon energy permeated the area, but it could not obscure the fearsome waves and countless lightning bolts weaving through heaven and sea like monstrous dragons and serpents, fearsomely twisting. Every so often, a giant demon beast as large as mountains would burst from the sea surface and roar unrestrained, reminiscent of the primeval chaos. The earth element spirit appears in a place engulfed by a unique radiance, making it quite easy to locate. However, the earth element spirit may attempt to escape. If it is not captured quickly, it will dive into the sea and vanish without a trace, only reappearing the next time, Fairy Yongxin spoke. Guan nodded slightly. He could feel a strong divine thought pervading this ocean, dissipating within the waters, unable to condense. It seemed that the ancient great cultivator Fairy Yongxin mentioned had at least the cultivation level of a divine soul true immortal. Divine soul true immortals could also perish. Who knew what calamity he had faced? While pondering, Guan's divine thought enveloped the sea demon thunder domain. The domain was immense, larger even than the entirety of the broken sea domain, teeming with countless demon creatures from every possible realm, ranging from the divine immortal of wondrous dharma down to those in the energy cultivation realm. There were many areas within the domain that his divine thought could not penetrate directly. They were guarded by powerful restrictions. Though Guan could forcefully break through with focused divine thought and succeed, it would inevitably destroy the restrictions and cause the internal minor heaven and earth to shatter. Guan's divine thought locked onto that divine immortal of wondrous dharma. This person was hidden within an island, surrounded by seas infested with demons each as large as the island itself, comparable to heaven and earth flying immortals. He just caught sight of a wandering immortal passing nearby, then watched as the immortal was swallowed whole by a black giant whale, so fast that its primordial spirit couldn't even escape. It was a female cultivator, almost like a fairy. Such a pity. Guan thought to himself while he responded to Fairy Yongxin. His divine thought quickly caught sight of a place glowing with an unusual light, and he directed Fairy Yongxin to fly in that direction. Standing beside Guan, an Xan observed everything around with intense curiosity. Such dense demon energy, all condensed into black mist. If she fell into the sea demon thunder domain alone, she felt it would be better just to end her life rather than try to navigate and survive in such a place. Boom! In the distance, the sea surface exploded as a 10-mile-long giant deep red fish leaped out. Looking closely, its body was entangled by two terrifying tentacles. And Zin's gaze had just reached the scene when she saw the deep red fish being crushed, its flesh and blood scattering, which made her shudder all over. Guan, Fairy Yongxin, and Fu Xinxiu seemed quite accustomed to this. Guan noticed that along the fringes of the Sea Demon Thunder domain stood city forts similar to those in the main city of the Broken Sea domain, indicating that the Holy Court had taken control of this sea area. Not allowing other sects to occupy it implied they made the rules. No wonder there were many cultivators fighting in groups, led by heaven and earth flying immortals, staying far from where the earth element spirit was located. Clearly they were not here for the earth element spirit. Upon closer inspection, Guan felt an aura similar to Lu Xianya's chi fortune on them. After a while, they reached a sea area enveloped in blue light, stretching 10,000 miles, making even the clouded sky appear transparent. Within the blue light sea, two carefree primordial immortals were engaged in fierce combat. Their divine skills were immensely powerful, yet the force of their battle did not exceed the range of the blue light. Guan's gaze locked onto a man named Zhao Qizhen who was dressed in battle armor, wielding a divine weapon, surrounded by a fire phoenix, casting spells with a majestic and domineering aura. He was holding a blue crystal stone in his other hand. Surely that was the earth element spirit. Guan could feel a wisp of divine thought within the blue crystal stone, similar to the divine thought in the sea. Zhao family's Zhao Qizhen, Fu Xinxiu declared coldly as he stared at Zhao Qizhen. Fairy Yongxin smiled and said, Zhao Qizhen and Xinxiu are fated rivals, clashing at every major cultivation level. An Xan looked toward Fu Xinxiu, curious about who had won but afraid to ask. Fu Xinxiu huffed, I lost the last combat but next time I will win. Guan was curious, was there a family powerful enough to rival Mortal World Peak? The fact that Fairy Yongxin highlighted Zhao Qizhen's family, instead of his sect, was enough to demonstrate the Zhao family's strength. An Xan was eager to ask why next time not now? Fairy Yongxin continued to introduce Zhao Qizhen's opponent, a supreme elder of a sect. A supreme elder losing to a family genius already reflected the disparity in their strengths. Their presence also put pressure on the two carefree primordial immortals, particularly on Zhao Qizhen who felt Fu Shengxi's aura. For a moment, the two combatants tacitly slowed the rhythm of their battle, keeping an eye out for the arrival of a third-party force. Fairy Yongxin and Fu Xinxiu also turned to Guan, curious to see how he would make his move. An Xian watched nervously ahead. After arriving in the blue light area, she could truly sense the power of the carefree primordial immortals. It was terrifying. Such overwhelming battle pressure had never appeared even at the Heaven Tier tournament. Guan raised his right hand and made a grabbing gesture at the engaged Zhao Qizhen, who vanished into thin air. The carefree primordial immortal he was fighting immediately retreated, his gaze swiftly turning toward the distant building. Fairy Yongxin and Fu Xinxiu did the same, their eyes falling on Guan's hand, and the two carefree primordial immortals suddenly looked alarmed. Coming to her senses, an Xan instinctively turned her head and stared wide-eyed. The previously dominant Zhao Qizhen was now in Guan's hand, tiny as an insect. Zhao Qizhen looked up, shock and dread filling his face, most terrified by his inability to escape, bound by an invisible, intangible force. Guan raised his left hand, extending his forefinger and middle finger. Zhao Qizhen felt something slip from his hand and looking down, saw the earth element spirit gone, now between Guan's fingers. Guan casually tossed it, and the earth element spirit fell into Fu Shengxi's hands. Fu Xinxiu stood dumbfounded and Fairy Yongxin's eyes also widened. It was successful just like that? Guan threw Zhao Qizhen from the palm of his right hand. Zhao Qizhen regained his freedom, returning to his original size. Stabilizing himself, he looked at Guan, his eyes filled with dread. Guan, expressionless, couldn't be bothered to say anything and instead turned to Fairy Yongxin. Let's go. Fairy Yongxin, coming to her senses, instinctively cast a spell, propelling the building. Guan simply revealed himself and did not earn the hostility of Zhao and his companion, so he spared their lives. Watching the building recede, Zhao Qizhen's handsome face flushed with embarrassment. He tried to calm his emotions. Just from the other's display of power, he knew he was no match. If it were him, he probably would not have spared a life. Now all he had was confusion. Since when did mortal world Peak have such a powerful figure? His capabilities must certainly be that of a divine immortal of wondrous dharma. Taking a deep breath, he turned to face the carefree primordial immortal he had been fighting, raised a hand in salute, leaving the latter quite stunned. Before the immortal could return the gesture, Zhao had already turned and left. On the building, Fu Xinxiu held the earth element spirit, a complex look on his face. Fairy Yongxin was the first to thank Guan, and Fu Xinxiu hurriedly followed suit. Is that it? An Xian couldn't help asking. That made the expressions of Fairy Yongxin and Fu Xinxiu even more complex. Guan just smiled. Isn't it good when things go smoothly? An Xian quickly said, of course it's good, I mean. Seeing her struggle to explain, Guan merely chuckled, let's head back first. Fairy Yongxin, smiling, felt this smooth operation was absolutely a surprise for her. Even if a carefree primordial immortal were to come to the Sea Demon Thunder domain, they would face life and death risks. As they reached outside the Sea Demon Thunder domain, Guan suddenly grabbed Nzin's shoulder, causing her heart to skip a beat, and she soon found herself flying out of the building. Guan, holding her shoulder with one hand and waving the other, sent the building into the distance. Fairy Yongxin and Fu Xinxiu were taken aback. Before they could react, Guan's voice reached their ears. You two go ahead. The building sped away, the two feeling the rules of heaven and earth retreating along the way, allowing unimpeded passage, an intricate technique beyond their comprehension. It seems he has another purpose, Fairy Yongxin remarked. Fu Xinxiu added, I think it's because his disciple still wants to see more. Fairy Yongxin looked at him in surprise, asking, is he so capricious? With his cultivation level, how can that be considered capricious? Fu Xinxiu responded, his gaze on the earth element spirit in his hand, his perception of Guan completely transformed. Meanwhile, Guan and an Xian soared on clouds, his divine thought covering an Xian, entering a special state where only those who reached the state of Tao Void mysterious immortal could see them. Master, you don't have to do this for me, it's so dangerous here, an Xian cautiously spoke, deeply touched. Guan smiled, don't overthink it, it's not for you. For whom then? You'll know soon. Hearing Guan say this, an Xian grew even more curious about what lay ahead. The storm clouds churned quickly along the way, and an Xian felt no discomfort despite their swift pace. Before long, Guan stopped. Lightning flashed through the clouds ahead, with demon mist swirling below. Suddenly, numerous evil ghosts burst out from the sea of clouds, startling an Xian, who instinctively moved closer to Guan. Booming sounds continuously came from below, drawing Nzin's attention. Moved by Guan's intent, they descended below the cloud sea, where an Xian was captivated by the massive battle occurring over the sea. A vast city phantom stood above the sea surface, from which endless divine souls and strange ghosts flew out, attacking the demons around Divine Exotic City. This was a chaotic war. Divine Exotic City? Is Martial Uncle Liya here? An Xian asked excitedly. Liya had participated in the Heaven Tier tournament, displaying Divine Exotic City's power, leaving a deep impression on an Xian. When she thought of the Immortal Path Supreme Treasure, Liya came to mind. That's an incredible Immortal Path Supreme Treasure. Master, is your Qingtian Peak this strong? An Xian curiously asked. Guan snorted, Divine Exotic City is a broken Immortal Path Supreme Treasure, merely a pseudo-Immortal Path Supreme Treasure. In terms of true power, it cannot compare to Qingtian Peak. Let me show you later. As soon as Qingtian Peak appeared, it grabbed the attention of all the demons. The demons, upon seeing Qingtian Peak, were equally scared. What is that? It's a huge mountain, no, an immortal treasure. Damn it, why is there another supreme treasure appearing? This aura? No good, it's dangerous. Retreat. Hurry, retreat. Panicked cries came from the demons as they scattered like monkeys when a tree falls, fleeing at tremendous speed. Qingtian Peak remained suspended in the air without touching down. Guan turned to an Xian and chuckled, it seems we can't show the full might of Qingtian Peak. An Xian wasn't foolish and shook her head, that's because Master, you are merciful, otherwise they wouldn't think of escaping. Guan just laughed and shook his head. In that moment he thought of Long Zhan and Xiao Xingtian, and thus decided to adhere to his principles. His target for elimination should at least be beings with whom he had grievances. This would prevent others from speculating other reasons. Moreover, his annual gain in lifespan had already reached 1.5 million years, and he had no reason to needlessly kill innocents and accumulate karma. After all, he could play it safe and slowly become stronger. Guan's greatest cruelty was against plants and trees, as all beings must eat. Which cultivator doesn't use medicinal herbs for alchemy? What he could do was choose the path that best suited his own growth. That's why, to Enzin's comment about mercy, Guan only smiled. He didn't consider himself merciful. His choices were also governed by a mindset of seeking benefits and avoiding harm. As the demons dispersed, the divine exotic immortal spirit heaved a sigh of relief. Liya, meanwhile, looked up at the majestic Qingtian peak, feeling a sense of relief at that moment. So that's how it is. Liya had always felt unworthy of owning divine exotic city, but now, seeing the grandeur of Qingtian peak, he realized the primordial ancestor possessed even stronger treasures. What was there to worry about? He didn't even know how high the primordial ancestor's Dao level was. Rather than being burdened, he would rather strive to become stronger and repay the primordial ancestor later. No matter how much he tried to think for the primordial ancestor's sake now, he couldn't possibly help the primordial ancestor, who was gambling on his future, not the present. As Qingtian Peak rose higher and rapidly shrank, it gave Liya a sensation of flying beyond the heavens. After Qingtian Peak disappeared, Liya didn't see the figure he hoped to see. He took a deep breath and said, "Let's go." The divine exotic immortal spirit turned its head and asked with surprise, "Where to?" "To a place where we can compete. Clearly this is not suitable for us, otherwise the primordial ancestor wouldn't have used another supreme treasure to save us," Liya said calmly. The divine exotic immortal spirit scratched its head, found the reasoning sound, and nodded in agreement. More and more great cultivators from the Supreme Sect were appearing, and Qinya Valley could no longer be hidden, but LV Badian and Li Xiandao had reached an agreement, so Qinya Valley remained unscathed. Ji Xiaoyu had learned about the situation inside Qinya Valley through the Ji family. How could it be? Guan retorted with a glare. Ji Xiaoyu pulled out a chair to sit down and began to recount her experiences over the years. Guan listened intently. After talking for 2 ancient hours, Ji Xiaoyu finally left. After Ji Xiaoyu went downstairs, she saw an XN speaking with 5 female disciples. Thus she waited on the spot. Once the 5 female disciples had left, she approached an XN. At this moment the sun began to set. An XN turned around, saw Ji Xiaoyu approaching, and quickly stepped forward to greet her. In her heart, Ji Xiaoyu was one of the potential sect mothers, a very strong contender, capable of living under the sect leader's floor. She had to be treated with respect. "Your talent is commendable. If you need help, just let me know. My Ji family has some resources and we can assist you," Ji Xiaoyu said, staring at an XN. Upon hearing this, an XN hurriedly thanked her, then added, "Thank you for the kind offer from the Ji family, but it's not necessary. After all, I have my master." Ji Xiaoyu interrupted her, "Don't mind his attitude. I'm helping you for his sake. The stronger you are, the better you can protect him." With that, she turned and walked away. Watching her retreating figure, an XN felt moved. Ji Xiaoyu truly had a domineering aura. An XN silently compared herself. Despite her rapid progress, she was not yet a match for Ji Xiaoyu. She decided to set Ji Xiaoyu as her target. Surpassing Ji Xiaoyu would enable her to chase after An Hao and Yang Jian. She refused to believe that Ji Xiaoyu's talent could surpass An Hao and Yang Jian. Inside the house, Guan was reading a book, the corners of his mouth curling into a smile. The evening sunlight burst through the window, bathing him in a layer of rosy light, as if he were clad in a robe of twilight. The sun set and the moon rose. The following morning, Guan left the Supreme Sect alone, controlling his sword as he flew into the distance. Once he was no longer locked onto by divine sense, his figure vanished instantly. An hour later, Guan arrived in front of the gate of Juhua Sect, surrounded by undulating mountains. From the cliff, each mountain boasted a sea of flowers, a magnificent sight. When he took out the sect leader level token from the Supreme Sect, the disciples of Juhua Sect halted their hostility and even warmly escorted him inside. Hearing that Guan was seeking the sect leader, the disciples dared not delay and immediately guided him, as the token Guan showed was of sect leader level from the Supreme Sect. An hour later, Guan was situated in a separate courtyard. He sensed that Jiang Qiong was in closed-door cultivation with disciples guarding outside. Sure enough, not much later, the guiding disciple hurried back, asking him to wait a few days since the sect leader was in seclusion. Guan wasn't in a hurry. With Jiang Qiong in seclusion, he'd discreetly help her with her path enlightenment and leave. Once she found out Guan had been looking for her but hadn't waited, she'd definitely feel embarrassed. Just thinking about it, Guan was a little excited. Chapter 336. Reincarnation to Earth. After the disciples of Juhua sect left, Guan sat inside the house and suddenly found himself feeling a bit bored. Do I need a round of reincarnation evolution? If he changed locations for the evolution this time, maybe he would have different luck. His lifespan had already surpassed 500 million years. In a few years, the outer world cave would experience another surge in lifespan. Might be fun to try. Mainly because lifespan samsara could enhance Guan's comprehension of the Tao rules, especially the way of cause and effect. He wasn't doing it for fun but for cultivation. Let's start one round. After convincing himself, Guan sat down and drank a cup of tea. While pouring another, he initiated lifespan samsara. The tense and thrilling reincarnation evolution began. You have expended 10 million years of your lifespan to initiate reincarnation evolution. Beginning connection with Tao rules, searching for reincarnation realm. You have the following realm choices, choose any one of them. 1. Dark Great Heaven and Earth. 2. Divine Origin Great Heaven and Earth. 3. Primordial Great Heaven and Earth. Seeing these three options, Guan was immediately attracted to the primordial Great Heaven and Earth. His physique was the primordial ultimate body, and he had always suspected that primordial pointed to a certain realm or world. How could he not be curious upon seeing the word primordial? He chose it. After all, he had already experienced the first two Great Heaven and Earth. Guan immediately made his choice. You have chosen to reincarnate into primordial Great Heaven and Earth. Given that the Tao rules of this realm are too powerful, you temporarily cannot activate the ability to seize lifespan, nor can you activate phase-based functions. Reincarnation evolution begins. Good, it's yet another world comparable to divine origin Great Heaven and Earth, which means there exist beings here who transcend the 9 heavens of immortal path. Guan felt even more anticipatory in his heart. In your first year you were born on planet Earth in Jiang City, Wuxia, and your parents named you Luhan, Earth. Guan's gaze underwent a subtle change. At 6 years old you started first grade in elementary school. Because you were too naughty and injured a classmate, you were severely punished by your father. At 12 you entered the first year of junior high school where you displayed extraordinary intelligence and ranked at the top of your class. At 15 you were admitted to Jiang City's top high school. There, through a classmate's introduction, you began reading online novels. Then you heard a voice saying it could save you, but you would have to serve as its servant thereafter. Do you accept its terms? What's there to hesitate about? Accept. Guan immediately made his choice. This life seemed rather tough. You chose to accept and soon fell into a coma. When you woke up, you found yourself in a cave. The person who saved you claimed to be the Mad Demon Lord, and from then on, you began to follow him in cultivation. At 27 your cultivation level reached the 5th layer of the Qi cultivation realm. One day the Mad Demon Lord forced you to ingest an elixir he had concocted, and your cultivation surged to the 7th layer of the Qi cultivation realm. At 28 the Mad Demon Lord found you again for a drug test. Your body ulcerated and bled uncontrollably and you fell into a coma. When you awoke, you found your face scarred and your right leg incapacitated. At 29 with the Mad Demon Lord's assistance, you successfully achieved foundation establishment, but the scars on your face remained unchanged. The Mad Demon Lord sent you back to the outer sect, but you couldn't bear the mockery and ridicule you faced and ultimately returned to serve the Mad Demon Lord. At 30 the Mad Demon Lord's test for you concluded and he imparted to you the demon skill, Swallowing Heaven technique. At 40 you mastered the Swallowing Heaven technique and also learned a set of hand techniques. At 42 the Mad Demon Lord left, leaving you to cultivate alone. At 44 enemies of the Mad Demon Lord came seeking the elixir of immortality he had created. You narrowly escaped death and fell into a river, fleeing downstream. At 45 wearing a mask, you saved a distressed young lady whose house servants had all been slaughtered by demons. Only she remained. Out of gratitude, she wanted to marry you and asked to see your true face. Do you remove the mask? Take it off. Women disrupt my cultivation. Better to scare her off quickly. Guan was impatient to see Lu Han's life take a turn for the better. You removed the mask, expecting to frighten Yuan Linger away, but to your surprise, after a brief moment of shock, she resolutely embraced you, and you lifted your arms to embrace her in return. At 46, you followed Yuan Linger back to the Yuan family estate. Her father hesitated about the marriage due to your appearance, but under Yuan Linger's insistence, you were eventually married. At 47, Yuan Linger bore you a son named Lu Qiuxian. Because your son did not take the surname of the Yuan family, her father grew even more displeased with you. At 56, demons invaded the city, slaughtering the inhabitants. You barely managed to keep your wife and child safe but couldn't save others, forcing your family of 3 to begin a nomadic life. At 58, you returned to the outer sect with Yuan Linger and your 11-year-old son Lu Qiuxian. Your son was discovered to have the rare heavenly spirit root and was taken as a disciple by a Mahayana realm elder. Your family stayed up all night, unable to sleep. Upon reaching this point, Guan's face broke into a smile. He was on the verge of feeling despondent. He hadn't even had the chance to make choices and felt like Lu Han could die at any moment. Too bitter. Chapter 337, River of Destiny. At the age of 59, your son Lu Qiuxian succeeded in foundation establishment, making a name for himself in the outer sect of the Tao court. Consequently, you received widespread pursuit and admiration. Even the 2 companions who had traveled through time with you came to congratulate you, making you reflect on how life and fate are elusive. At 60, you successfully reached core formation. At 63, your son Lu Qiuxian awakened the Supreme Treasure Body, shocking the Tao court. He was exceptionally accepted into the Tao court, and from then on, you and your son parted ways. Supreme Treasure Body? Isn't that the treasure body once possessed by the divine exotic ghost king, Impermanence Tian? Guan was even more hopeful for this cycle of reincarnation evolution. This lifetime will he rise against the heavens through his son? What followed in the cycle of reincarnation was all about cultivation, waiting until 100 years later. At 172, you successfully broke through to the nascent soul realm. You had just shared the news with your wife, Yuan Linger, when suddenly you received the terrible news that your son Lu Qiuxian had fallen, his essence blood consumed by another. Upon hearing this, your wife Yuan Linger fainted on the spot. At 173, you finally uncovered the truth behind Lu Qiuxian's death. He died at the hands of the crown prince of the strongest divine dynasty of the era, who was also a direct disciple of the Tao court and had already stepped into the immortal path realm. The gap between your statuses was vast. Lu Qiuxian's master sighed and hoped you could let go of this matter. At 174, your wife Yuan Linger died of sorrow. After burying her, you left the outer sect of the Tao court. At 176, you couldn't abide the injustice you witnessed, saving a group of mortals. Before you left, an old man stopped you, declaring that your chief fortune was extraordinary and that there was a turn of fate in store for you. He offered to cast a divination for you, to help you find this turning point. Do you accept his divination for you? Yes. Let alone Lu Han, even just observing made Guan feel desperate. With such poor aptitude and cultivation techniques, when would Lu Han ever seek revenge? You accepted the old man's divination. During the process, his chi blood ran amok and he spat out reverse-flowing blood. Before collapsing, he told you that your turn of fate lay within Burial Immortal Ridge. After you confirmed that the old man was unharmed, you headed for Burial Immortal Ridge. At 185, you finally reached Burial Immortal Ridge. You learned it was a death zone for mortals. Even creatures of the immortal path struggled to survive there. Yet you resolutely entered Burial Immortal Ridge. What followed were various perilous encounters. Guan was on edge, fearing that Lu Han might suddenly die young. At 192, you stumbled upon an abandoned cave and unexpectedly discovered a stele inscribed with bizarre and complex characters. As you wandered about, you accidentally triggered a mechanism. In a panic, your blood splashed onto the stele as you collided with it, and soon after, a mysterious force drew you inside the stele. You arrived within the miniature world of the Chengkuan Saint Emperor and met the remnant soul of the Chengkuan Saint Emperor. After some negotiation, you ultimately became a disciple of the Chengkuan Saint Emperor. At 200, under the guidance of the Chengkuan Saint Emperor, you cultivated the Supreme Treasure Body. Your physical body was reborn, and you regained the appearance of a 20-year-old with no scars on your face. Only your hair turned white. At 210, you broke through the divinity transformation realm. Things are looking up. Qingquan Saint Emperor? Just by the sound of it he must be powerful. Guan was also excited, for he would feel Lu Han's experiences as the memories of the cycle of reincarnation flowed into his mind. Naturally, he hoped the memories would not be so filled with hardship. What came next were constant breakthroughs, practicing spells and divine skills. At 250 you broke through the void crossing realm. At 317 you broke through the unification realm. At 430, you broke through the mystic heart realm. At 431, the Qingquan Saint Emperor called you forth, saying his remnant soul had little time left. He wanted to help his supreme treasure body step into the supreme Tao body before his soul dissipated, but it required enduring unimaginable pain. Do you accept? Accept. Guan made his choice without hesitation. You accepted the help of the Qingquan Saint Emperor. After several months of tempering, you successfully cultivated the supreme Tao body, causing a phenomenon that alarmed the Tao rules of great heaven and earth. You gained the divine aspect of the supreme immortal. At 440, you left the miniature world of the Qingquan Saint Emperor and returned to the mortal world. Upon reaching Burial Immortal Ridge, you were attacked by a Mahayana realm cultivator with an ancient treasure body. You slew the assailant, breaching the realm gap, and inadvertently consumed their essence blood, further strengthening your physique. Over the next 50 years, Lu Han left Burial Immortal Ridge, seeking out cultivators with ancient treasure bodies. Some were successful hunts, some were not, but in any case he always managed to escape. Guan saw traces of impermanence Tian in him, perhaps this was the destiny of the supreme treasure body. Until the age of 600, Lu Han, under attack from several Nirvana realm great cultivators, forcefully underwent tribulation crossing. He used the heavenly tribulation to obliterate his foes and stepped into the immortal path realm. After that, Lu Han entered the path of the unbeatable. At 720 he found the divine dynasty's crown prince, executed him, and consumed his essence blood. His cultivation level skyrocketed. Concurrently, the emperor of the divine dynasty, enraged, issued a kill order against him. Lu Han fled while killing his enemies. Guan had few chances to choose, mostly deciding whether to save or kill. After numerous prompts, Lu Han finally reached the age of 10,000. His cultivation level reached the wandering immortal realm, making him the #1 prodigy of the era. However, he was attacked by the carefree primordial immortal and was in critical condition. Fortunately, a great power from the Tao court intervened, and he returned to the Tao court. The two companions who had accompanied him through time had long since turned to dust. Revisiting the old places, he entered a state of path enlightenment, perceiving the power of time. The master of the Tao court wished to take Lu Han as his disciple. Lu Han hesitated and Guan helped him choose to accept. From then on, Lu Han became the top disciple of the Tao court, sweeping through his peers and standing out amongst his fellow heaven's prodigies. Guan helped him reject numerous proposals from daughters of heaven. Outside the Tao court, Lu Han vanquished demons and evildoers, rescued those in pain and suffering, and established a holy name. At the age of 20,000, Lu Han stepped into the heaven and earth flying immortal realm, becoming the youngest heaven and earth flying immortal in the history of the Tao court. At 50,000, Lu Han once again broke the records of the Tao court by becoming the youngest carefree primordial immortal. At 60,000, Lu Han ventured alone into the divine dynasty, executed the emperor of the divine dynasty in front of all the powerhouses, and in the emperor's treasure Botus Bone Palace, he found the remains of his son, Lu Qiuxian. Guan was immersed in Lu Han's legendary life, with Lu Han living more and more splendidly. Compared to the domineering ways of Long Zhan, he was reckless and unfettered, yet he didn't lose his sense of righteousness. At 100,000, Lu Han consumed the essence blood of thousands of treasure bodies and cultivated the awe-inspiring Supreme Saint body. At 200,000, Lu Han swept across the great heaven and earth, becoming a living myth. At 250,000, Lu Han encountered the Taoist tide in the cosmos. Amidst the waves of the Tao, he perceived the true meaning of Tao and shaped the primordial karmic body. At 300,000, Lu Han reached the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma realm, traversed the cosmos and returned to Earth, only to find it already desolate. He cut ties with his past, and his Taoist heart underwent transformation. At 430,000, you broke through your own shackles and reached the Tao void mysterious immortal realm, astonishing the universe. You retrieved your life grid. Do you unlock the life-stealing ability? Considering Long Zhan's precedent, Guan hesitated for a moment and chose not to. Don't unlock. It seems Lu Han doesn't need the life-stealing ability. Since he didn't unlock the life-stealing ability, Lu Han didn't undergo a drastic change in personality. He was domineering against his enemies, but he also aided the suffering worlds, continually spreading his holy name throughout various lands. At 500,000, Lu Han met the Saint Ancestor of the 9th level of Immortal Path, who appreciated him. The Saint Ancestor imparted a Taoist title to him, naming him the Primordial Divine Emperor. Until Lu Han reached the 9th level of the Immortal Path, Guan faced another choice. At 830,000, you stepped into the 9th level of the Immortal Path. After the breakthrough, you immersed yourself in path enlightenment. You unexpectedly sensed the existence of the River of Destiny. You hesitated. Do you choose to step into the River of Destiny? Guan also hesitated. The River of Destiny sounds extraordinary, and stepping into it could allow for the understanding of the Tao of Destiny. To Guan, Lu Han's divine skills and cultivation techniques weren't very important. Comprehending the Tao rules mattered more. But the unknown represented danger. Even Long Zhan, surpassing the 9 heavens of Immortal Path, had not encountered the River of Destiny. After much hesitation, Guan chose yes. You chose to step into the River of Destiny. After entering the river, you entered a state of path enlightenment. You comprehended the Tao of Destiny. With your own creation, you revived your son Lu Qiuxin, aiding him in cultivating the primordial karmic body. You wished to revive your wife, but Yuan Linger, with her low Tao level, had already reincarnated. You were attacked by the Black Profound Emperor. In the face of danger, you sent your son Lu Qiuxin to the end of the River of Destiny. You died by the hands of the Black Profound Emperor. Reincarnation ends. Damn it. It's the Black Profound Emperor again. Angered, Guan took a step and arrived at an island overseas, then opened the lifespan barrier. He sat cross-legged on the ground, vast memories subsequently flooding his mind. Textual description and real feelings are two entirely different matters. After closing his eyes, it didn't take long for Guan to frown. A moment later, Guan's frown relaxed, and a smile spread across his face as he experienced the beautiful process of a family depending on one another. Time passed rapidly. An ancient hour later, Guan returned to the Juhua sect, sitting at a table with cold tea. He placed a hand on the table and closed his eyes again, carefully feeling Lu Han's life experience. Facing the Black Profound Emperor was like making the wrong bet, but stepping into the River of Destiny was not. He gained a profound understanding of the Tao of Destiny, and he also shared the feelings of Lu Han when he sent his son away. Lu Han lived for more than 800,000 years and experienced everything. Before his death, he was able to revive his son, dying without regrets. In the final battle, Lu Han still demonstrated his strength, leaving an indelible wound on the Black Profound Emperor, with the injury mark landing above the Emperor's left brow. Between the memories of two lives, Guan couldn't determine whether the Black Profound Emperor faced by Long Zhan was stronger or the one faced by Lu Han was. Both were far inferior to the Black Profound Emperor in strength. Lu Han managed to injure the Black Profound Emperor primarily because of his special divine skills. But right after injuring the Emperor, he was instantly killed. For now, Guan set aside his anger towards the Black Profound Emperor, immersing himself in the understanding of the Tao of Destiny. As day turned to night and the moon rose, he sat there, unmoving. 3 days later, a figure pushed open the door, bringing a wave of fragrance that altered Guan's gaze. "Why are you here?" Jiang Qiong asked with joy, swiftly taking a seat at the table. As she looked at Guan, the happiness on her face couldn't be concealed. Guan looked at her, his eyes regaining their clarity, yet that one glance made her heart involuntarily tremble. Somehow Jiang Qiong felt he was in low spirits, and her smile vanished accordingly. Chapter 338, Destruction Tao Seal, What's Wrong with You? Jiang Qiong asked with a furrowed brow, her expression growing colder as she continued, "Is someone giving you a hard time?" Hearing this, Guan revealed a smile and said, "It's nothing, I was just thinking about the story of a book." "Really?" asked Jiang Qiong, looking doubtful. "Truly," Guan laughed. "Actually, I was thinking of leaving before you finished your seclusion. That way you might feel guilty for missing me. But you came so quickly it caught me a little off guard." After all, he was a divine thought true immortal. Even though Lu Han's memories were heavy and vast, he could quickly detach from them. To him, Lu Han was just a past life. Lu Han was him, but he was Guan. With Guan's words, the worry in Jiang Qiong's heart dissipated. She rolled her eyes at him and said in an irritated tone, "You sure have quite the imagination. I wouldn't feel the slightest bit guilty." "Is that so? It seems I've overestimated our relationship." But I'm still quite happy that you came looking for me. It's rare to see you leave the Supreme Sect. It's just that I suddenly thought of you. Every time, it's you who comes to find me. It's about time I came to you, especially since the Supreme Sect and the Juhua Sect have established a good relationship." The two chatted away. As Guan spoke, he observed Jiang Qiong's fate, peering into her destiny. Without undergoing nirvana, all mortals are just spirits. Guan could see the end of Jiang Qiong's life with one glance. Jiang Qiong's fate was remarkably intricate, with innumerable variations, essentially a multitude of possible trajectories. Within her destiny, Guan could not see himself, but he knew the reason there were so many branches in Jiang Qiong's future was because of him. His choices could change her destiny. However, all branches of destiny flowed toward the same conclusion: death. Some led to peaceful passing, others to death in battle, and some to deviation during cultivation, resembling a tree of fate spreading its branches. Fate seemed so cruel. Having fused with Lu Han's life experiences, Guan had a deeper insight into the workings of fate, understanding the mysterious forces that could, at any moment, disperse predestined paths. Guan conjectured that these were perhaps the slivers of opportunity left by the 3,000 Great Tao, the slim chance for sentient beings to transcend mortal limits. As long as Jiang Qiong could achieve nirvana, her destiny would be toppled and reshaped. Guan thought of his own fate. What was it like? Being part of it, he could not peer into his own destiny. Fate was the confluence of all causality in life. Although those who could peer into fate could not see their own destinies, they could deduce the causality related to themselves and make predictions. Occasionally, Guan would even help the disciples gather medicinal herbs, picking but not taking, leaving those disciples feeling honored and shocked. Gradually, Guan heard some news. The immortal dynasty was about to emerge. On Mortal World Peak, one could learn about various major events in the great heavenly spirit land. Guan also heard about the long-standing feud between the immortal dynasty and the Holy Court. The two forces had been warring for many years until Xingtian ascended the throne, and the mortal world basked in peace at last. Xingtian was certainly the strongest in the great heavenly spirit land, but no one knew how powerful he truly was. The emergence of the immortal dynasty would inevitably provoke oppression from the Holy Court. Once friction sparked between the two, the tranquil days in mortal world would end. Despite experiencing several calamities, the Broken Sea domain's influence was too small to affect the whole world. Broadly speaking, the great heavenly spirit land had maintained peace for hundreds of thousands of years. And Xian was also very interested in these events. It was her first time hearing about the immortal dynasty, and she didn't realize that the mortal world harbored a force capable of contending with the Holy Court. After a while, Guan took an Xian to a courtyard on the mountain's peak. An Xian began cultivating, and Guan rode in the yard to relax. His main purpose for coming today was to take a breather. A moment later, he suddenly felt something and looked up. His gaze pierced through the sky and shot out into the depths of the universe. He sensed a strange aura coming from the silent destruction domain. This sensation was distinctly uncomfortable. Before long, he saw a redwood coffin flying out from the darkness. It was a deep red coffin that seemed to have blood plasma sticking to it, surrounded by wisps of black vapor visible to the naked eye. There was something inside the coffin. Could it be another entity targeting the heavenly demon fetus? Guan thought to himself, with no intention of intervening. The presence and absence of concealment of the deep red coffin must have alerted the Holy Court. Indeed, Guan saw many figures flying out from the Holy Land where the Holy Court was based, the weakest among them being carefree primordial immortals. What a powerful foundation. Guan was again shocked by the strength of the Holy Court. This was just the first response team they'd sent out, and it was hard to imagine the terrifying power the Holy Court could unleash if they went all out. However, Guan saw a divine immortal of wondrous dharma confront the deep red coffin, resisting with his immense mana. He displayed an expression of agony as his flesh rapidly dissolved into blood, spilling onto the coffin and quickly congealing. His immortal soul of wondrous dharma, however, managed to escape by a hair's breadth. Such frightening power. Guan couldn't see how the deep red coffin had devoured the divine immortal of wondrous dharma. It was a force he had never seen before. One could surmise that the entity within the deep red coffin was not a heavenly demon, or at least not one he had encountered before. The deep red coffin approached the great heavenly spirit land swiftly and irresistibly. It seemed as though the cultivators flying out from the holy court had received orders. They all stopped and even made way. What did this mean? Guan frowned slightly. Could it be that the deep red coffin was related to the holy court? While pondering, Guan lowered his head and continued to write. Let the tall ones handle it when the sky falls, as the saying goes. Since the holy court was also part of the great heavenly spirit land, he was curious to see what would happen next. Chapter 339. The Dark Emperor from the battle court. As evening approached, Guan stood up and stretched languidly, his gaze turning towards outer heaven. The dark red coffin had already reached outer heaven and was about to crash into great heavenly spirit land. An Exan walked over and asked, "Are we going back?" Guan nodded slightly, and an Exan immediately went to pack their things. She had bought some trinkets on Dingtian Peak, planning to bring them back to Third Medicine Valley. As long as it didn't reveal her relationship with Guan on Mortal World Peak, he would not stop her. An Exan was quick with her tasks, and after she was done she hurried back to where Guan was standing. Seeing her master looking up, she instinctively looked up as well. She saw a shooting star streak across the night sky, falling toward the distant land. "What is that?" an Exan muttered. Guan didn't answer her. He watched the meteor disappear into the distance and then, with a wave of his sleeve, disappeared into the air with her. After returning to Third Medicine Valley, the master and disciple each returned to their own rooms. Guan sat in his chair, seemingly admiring the night scene outside the window, but in reality, his divine thought was directed towards the dark red coffin far away. The coffin landed on a continent 10 times larger than the Taizong continent, bringing an apocalyptic disaster to all the living beings there. In an extremely short amount of time, that continent turned into a sea of fire, 90% of the life wiped out, with the rest fleeing into the ocean. The impact force from the dark red coffin hitting the ground was still expanding, affecting even more oceans and land. It was far from the Taizong continent, but even farther from Mortal World Peak, eliminating the possibility that it was targeting the demon fetus. After landing, the dark red coffin stuck at the bottom of a giant pit, motionless, with no sign of the lid opening. Night passed and day rose. Before descending the stairs, Guan saw that the dark red coffin still hadn't opened, so he stopped thinking about it and went downstairs to follow his disciples in their morning exercise. The morning exercise was a tradition of Third Medicine Valley, and occasionally great cultivators who came to play chess would join in. The discipline during the exercise wasn't strict. Disciples could interact with each other, creating a harmonious atmosphere. After the morning exercise, Yu Yingying approached Shen Xinzi hesitantly. Shen Xinzi was sitting under a tree with a copy of Journey to the West in his hands. "Have you been feeling inexplicably anxious since last night, feeling very unsettled?" Shen Xinzi asked calmly without looking up at her. Yu Yingying nodded hastily and said, "I've never felt like this before. If I have to become that, you can kill me in advance." Shen Xinzi looked up at her in surprise. Yu Yingying thought he was questioning her and explained in a low voice, "The heavenly demon should not be so easy to perish. My suicide definitely wouldn't work. You are an enlightened monk, you know how to eliminate demons. I don't want to hurt others." Shen Xinzi looked deeply at her and said, "Don't worry, in this lifetime, it is very hard for you to turn into a heavenly demon. The reason you're feeling this is probably because the natural enemy of the heavenly demons has arrived." He had also sensed the commotion from the night before. His cultivation realm was high, and his unease far surpassed Yu Yingying's, which was why he picked up Journey to the West, to try and distract himself. "Really? What is the natural enemy of the heavenly demons? What should I do?" Yu Yingying asked eagerly. Shen Xinzi lowered his head and said, "Do nothing, continue with your cultivation practice and get used to it." Yu Yingying was stunned and could only walk away full of thoughts. On the other hand, Guan, who was patrolling Medicine Valley on Blood Prison Great Saint, heard the conversation between Yu Yingying and Shen Xinzi. The natural enemy of heavenly demons? Guan took off Qingtian Peak from his waist, then lifted it up and sent his divine thought into it. Immediately after, he arrived inside an old temple. He was about to speak when a man in black appeared and asked, "Have you made up your mind?" Guan shook his head, changing the subject to ask, "Do your heavenly demons have a natural enemy?" The man in black frowned upon hearing this and asked warily, "What do you mean?" Since when do heavenly demons have a natural enemy? Guan then waved his sleeve, and an illusion appeared between them. The man in black's expression dramatically changed when he saw the dark red coffin. Seeing his reaction, Guan was not in a hurry, he waited for him to speak. The man in black's hands clenched into fists inside his sleeves. Taking a deep breath, he said through gritted teeth, "He is coming for the great emperor, but his arrival will also bring disaster to great heaven and earth. The fact that he can enter indicates that Holy Court also plans to use him to eradicate the heavenly demons within the great heavenly spirit land." "Who is he?" Guan asked. "His name is the Dark War Emperor. No one knows his origins. He once wreaked havoc in the silent destruction domain. I only know he comes from the ancient battle court," the man in black answered. "Battle court? The forces established by Long Zhan?" Guan kept his composure and further inquired, "What is the origin of the battle court?" The man in black looked at him before saying, "The battle court is a legend of the silent destruction domain. Legend has it that there once was a force that ruled the great thousand world, standing at the peak of the immortal path. Whether it was destroyed or left is unknown, that's all I know."